December came to forward operating Base Ironwood, not with snow, but with ice, the kind that formed in layers during the night and made every surface a calculated risk, the kind that turned breath into visible proof of life and made rifle metal cold enough to burn skin on contact. Montana wilderness stretched in all directions beyond the perimeter wire, 40 miles of frozen nothing between the base and the Canadian border, and in that nothing, threats moved with patience that sensors could not measure. Captain Sarah Brennan stood on a frozen ridgeline 1,400 meters from the base perimeter. Through her scope, a figure moved in darkness. Not enemy, friendly patrol. Staff Sergeant Tyler Hammond leading his team through the sensor grid perimeter, their thermal signatures bright against the cold earth like candles in a cathedral. She watched them move with the casual confidence of men who trusted their equipment, who believed that technology would warn them of danger before danger found them. Then she saw it. Heat signature 600 meters beyond the patrol. Hostile observer, professional, disciplined. Watching Hammond's team with the same careful attention she was giving to both of them. Calculating, recording, learning patterns that would be used later, when it mattered, when lives hung in the balance of what had been observed and what had been missed. Sarah's finger rested on the trigger of her M24. The rifle was old, older than most of the soldiers at Ironwood, older than the sensor network they trusted, but it functioned with a precision that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with care. On the stock, engraved in letters worn smooth by years of handling, were the initials MC, and below them 4 words that had become something between instruction and prayer. The wind never lies. She could take the shot, 1,400 meters through cold air that made distance calculations simple and wind drift minimal. She could end the threat that Hammond's team did not know existed. She could drop the hostile observer, and her patrol would never know how close they had come to being compromised. But she didn't. Instead, she shifted her aim 200 meters ahead of Hammond's position, found a snow-laden tree branch thick as a man's torso, calculated angle and impact, breathed out slowly the way Marcus Cole had taught her, emptying her lungs until that space between heartbeats, when the body became perfectly still. She fired. The branch fell with a crack that split the night. Hammond's patrol stopped instantly, weapons up, formation tight. Alert! The hostile observer 600 meters beyond them melted into the darkness. His observation window closed, his opportunity lost. Sarah's radio crackled. Hammond's voice carried tension and confusion in equal measure. "Ghost, was that you?" She keyed the transmit button. Her voice was flat, without inflection, the tone of someone reporting weather rather than saving lives. "Terrain hazard, keep moving." She watched the patrol exit the sector safely, watched them disappear into the tree line where sensors could track them again, where the technology they trusted could resume its constant vigil. Then she packed her rifle with movements that had become ritual, each action performed in the same sequence, the same way, every time. The way Cole had taught her, the way his hands had moved when he cleaned the same weapon, in different places, in years that felt simultaneously distant and immediate. The sky above her was clear, stars visible in quantities that city dwellers never saw, cold that made the air feel thin. She looked at those stars for a moment, then down at the rifle in her hands, at the engraving, at the words. The wind never lies. 72 hours earlier, she had not been on this ridgeline. 72 hours earlier, she had been arriving at Forward Operating Base Ironwood for the first time, carrying orders that placed her in command of a sniper section that did not want her, reporting to a battalion commander who trusted technology more than instinct, and carrying a rifle that everyone would immediately recognize as obsolete. 72 hours earlier, she had not yet learned that Brigadier General Victor Kane was coming to Ironwood, had not yet discovered what Cole had hidden in the rifle she carried, had not yet met the woman who would tell her that everything she knew about Marcus Cole's death was a carefully constructed lie. 72 hours earlier, the mission had not yet begun. The drive to Ironwood took 6 hours through mountain roads that tested vehicle suspension and driver patience in equal measure. Sarah drove alone. Her gear was minimal. 2 duffel bags, 1 footlocker. Everything she owned that mattered fit in a space smaller than most people's closets. She had learned years ago that possessions were weight, and weight in the field was death, and the habit of traveling light had become so ingrained that she no longer remembered how to accumulate things that did not serve immediate purpose. The rifle rode in the passenger seat, Not in a case, not broken down. Whole and ready, the way a soldier carried a weapon they might need without warning. It was against regulations to transport a weapon that way. Against common sense to treat a precision instrument with such casual disregard for proper storage and padding. But Sarah had been carrying this rifle for 2 years in exactly this manner. And in 2 years, it had not failed once. And she trusted it more than she trusted regulations. The base appeared as she crested the final ridge, a collection of modular buildings arranged in defensive geometry, surrounded by triple fence lines and sensor arrays that represented millions of dollars of detection technology. Guard towers at intervals, vehicle barriers at the gate, the architecture of security built by people who believed that enough sensors and enough wire could create safety. She stopped at the gate. Military police checked her identification, scanned her orders. One of them looked at the rifle in her passenger seat, and his expression shifted in a way she had seen before. Recognition mixed with something else. Judgment, maybe? Or curiosity? Or both. That's an M24, ma'am. Yes. We use MK13S here. Modern systems. I'm aware. He wanted to say more. She could see it in the way he held her identification card a moment longer than necessary. But he was a specialist and she was a captain, and the gap between those ranks was sufficient to keep whatever thoughts he had unspoken. Welcome to Ironwood, ma'am. Colonel Pritchard is expecting you. The gate rolled open. She drove through. Behind her, the specialist watched until her vehicle disappeared into the motor pool. She knew he was watching because soldiers always watch when something unfamiliar entered their space. Because vigilance was habit, and habit was survival, and survival was the only thing that mattered when you lived in places where the perimeter wire was the only thing between you and people who wanted you dead. Colonel James Pritchard's office was in the main command building, second floor, corner position, with windows that looked out over the northern approach. The door was open when she arrived. He sat behind a desk that held exactly 3 items: a computer, a phone, a single file folder. The minimalism was either personality or affectation. She would learn which soon enough. He stood when she entered. 43 years old, fit in the way of someone who exercised because it was required rather than enjoyed. His uniform was perfect. Creases sharp enough to draw blood. Ribbons in precise rows. Everything about him said control. Everything about his office said man who did not tolerate chaos. Captain Brennan, your file's interesting. She remained at attention, said nothing. He gestured to a chair. She sat. 3 combat tours, he continued. Expert marksman qualification, multiple decorations, and a legacy transfer from Master Sergeant Marcus Cole. He picked up her M24, examined it with hands that knew weapons. His fingers found the engraving automatically. Read it aloud. MC, the wind never lies. He looked at her. Marcus Cole died 2 years ago, Operation Granite Falls, officially classified as a training accident. Yes, sir. This rifle should have been decommissioned. Returned to inventory or destroyed. Why are you carrying it? Sir, it functions perfectly. Maintained to standard. 0 malfunctions in 24 months of continuous use. Pritchard set the rifle down carefully. Opened her file. Read something that made his eyes narrow slightly. Your previous commanding officer wrote that you demonstrate exceptional skill, but questionable judgment regarding operational protocol. He looked up. That concerns me, Captain. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted, I don't break rules that matter. I break rules that slow good people down. The silence that followed stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Pritchard studied her with the intensity of someone trying to read a document in a language they almost understood. Then he closed her file. We'll see, Captain. Sniper section briefing is at 1400 hours. You'll meet your team. They're good soldiers. Professional. They work within established protocols, and they trust the systems we've built here. He paused. I expect you to do the same. Yes, sir. Dismissed. She stood, took her rifle, turned toward the door. Captain, she stopped. Marcus Cole was a good soldier, one of the best I ever trained with. That was back in 2008, before either of us had the gray hair we're earning now. Pritchard's expression softened fractionally. Whatever he taught you, it kept you alive this long. I respect that. But this base runs on integration and coordination, old methods and new systems. If you can make them work together, we'll get along fine. Understood, sir. She left his office carrying the knowledge that Pritchard would be watching her closely. that every action she took would be measured against his standards, that the rifle she carried was already marking her as someone who lived outside the normal parameters of modern military operations. The briefing room held 7 people when she entered, 6 men who would form her sniper section, and one wall of screens that displayed real-time data from the base's sensor network, thermal imaging, motion tracking, weather data, ballistic computers calculating wind speed and direction at multiple elevations. The technology was impressive, expensive, capable of things that would have seemed impossible 20 years ago. Staff Sergeant Tyler Hammond stood when she entered, 26 years old, sharp, confident. He held a tablet that connected wirelessly to the sensor displays. Everything about him said next-generation soldier, the kind who had grown up with technology and trusted it implicitly. "Ma'am, Staff Sergeant Hammond, section lead until your arrival." He gestured to the others. "This is Specialist Lucas Wade, Sergeant Chen, Specialist Morrison, Corporal Diaz, and Private First Class Torres." She noted their names, their postures. Wade was young, 22 maybe. He watched her with interest that bordered on eagerness. The others were professional but reserved, measuring her the way soldiers always measured new leadership. "At ease." She set her rifle on the table. Every eye went to it immediately. "I'm Captain Brennan. I'll be commanding this section effective immediately. What I need to know is simple: your capabilities, your limitations, your trust in each other, and your equipment." Hammond stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, we should address something first." He nodded at her rifle. "That's an M24 system. We operate Mk13 Mod 7 platforms here, integrated with the battalion sensor network, thermal tracking, ballistic computers, real-time atmospheric data." He held up his tablet. "Everything feeds into this. Coordinated firing solutions, team integration. It's how we operate. And you're wondering how I'll integrate with a weapon that predates your sensor network by 15 years. Yes, ma'am." She picked up her rifle, held it so they could all see the wear patterns on the stock, the engraving, the evidence of years of use and care. "I don't integrate with your network. I read wind." Silence. Hammond's expression showed carefully controlled skepticism. "Ma'am, we have atmospheric sensors that provide real-time wind data at multiple elevations, accurate to 0.1 knots, updated every 5 seconds. They tell you what the wind did 5 seconds ago. I tell you what it'll do 3 seconds from now. There's a difference." Wade shifted forward slightly. His interest had moved from polite to genuine. "How, ma'am?" "By watching things your sensors can't see. Vegetation movement at distance, thermal differentials that create rotation, snowdrift patterns, mirage through the scope." She looked at Hammond. "Your sensors measure local conditions. They're excellent at telling you what's happening where you are. But wind at 800 meters isn't the same as wind at your position. And wind in a valley isn't the same as wind on a ridge. I can see those differences. Your sensors can't." Hammond wanted to argue. She could see it in the set of his jaw. But before he could speak, alarms shattered the moment. Red lights, klaxon sound that made everyone's training kick in automatically. The radio on Pritchard's desk crackled with urgency. TOC to all elements. Sensor grid just went dark. Complete network failure. All thermals, all communications, all tracking systems down. Hammond's tablet screen went black. The wall displays died. In seconds, the room full of technology became nothing more than a room with soldiers and weapons that suddenly felt inadequate. Pritchard's voice came through emergency backup radio. "How long to restore?" "Unknown, sir. Initial analysis suggests sophisticated jamming, not equipment failure. Someone's doing this deliberately." Pritchard appeared in the briefing room doorway 30 seconds later. Looked at his section, at the dead displays, at Sarah standing with her rifle that didn't need sensors to function. "Captain Brennan, without our network, we're blind. How exactly does reading wind help with that?" She slung her rifle. "Give me 3 people, I'll show you." The northern perimeter was 200 meters from the command building. Sarah moved at a pace that made Hammond and Wade work to keep up. The third soldier was Morrison, older than the other 2, experienced enough to understand that sometimes showing was more effective than explaining. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees in the hour since she arrived. Cold air settling into the valley, creating conditions that sensors should have been reading and weren't it. Creating conditions that made everything more difficult and more dangerous in equal measure. Hammond checked his dead tablet out of habit. Without sensors, optimal observation post would be grid November 4, clear sight lines, thermal coverage when systems restore, elevated position. Sarah stopped, looked at the terrain, felt the wind on her face, turned slowly, reading the landscape the way some people read books. Then she pointed northeast. Wind's not coming from northwest. It's coming from northeast. 12 knots, gusting to 18. Cold air flowing down from the ridge, hitting warm valley air, creating rotation. Hammond frowned. Ma'am, that's not possible without measurement equipment. Close your eyes. Ma'am? Close your eyes. Stop trying to see. Feel. Hammond hesitated, then complied. Wade did the same without being asked. Sarah watched them stand there, eyes closed, faces turned slightly into the wind. They were only now beginning to actually notice. Feel how it's not constant, how it pushes, then eases, then pushes again. That's gusting. Feel how it's cold on your face, but there's a warm pocket near your chest. That's different air masses mixing. Now open your eyes. They opened their eyes. Sarah pointed to vegetation 800 meters out. 3 o'clock. Watch how the branches move. They watched. After a moment, Wade spoke quietly. They're bending northeast, not northwest. Sensors measure local conditions. They said northwest because that's what's happening here at the base. But 800 meters out on that ridge, the wind is different. If I were a hostile observer, I'd use that dead zone. Sensors can't see it because they're measuring the wrong location. But wind shows me exactly where to look. She unslung her rifle, settled into shooting position. No laser rangefinder, no ballistic computer, just eyes and breathing and mathematics that existed somewhere in the space between training and instinct. Grid Mike 7, 940 meters. Watch. She fired. The shot hit snow at Mike 7 with impact visible even at that distance. A figure burst from concealment. Opt for training personnel who had been positioned to test the base's defensive awareness. He had been invisible to every other observer. Until now. Pritchard's voice crackled over radio, surprise evident even through electronic distortion. How the hell did you spot him without thermal? Sarah stood, brushed snow from her knees, keyed her radio with calm that bordered on monotone. The wind never lies, sir. We just forget how to listen. Hammond stared at the position where the OPFOR had been hiding. Then at Sarah. Then at his dead tablet. Something in his expression had changed. Not quite belief, but the beginning of possibility. Wade spoke first. Ma'am, how long did it take you to learn that? My instructor learned it over 20 years. He taught me in 2. I'll teach you in 6 months. Because war doesn't wait for perfect conditions, and neither should soldiers. They returned to base as sensors came back online. Systems restored, network functional. But something had shifted in the way Hammond looked at her rifle. In the way Wade asked questions about vegetation movement and thermal layers. In the way Morrison nodded slowly, recognizing something he had not seen in years. Recognition that technology was tool, not replacement. That fundamentals mattered when everything else failed. The tactical briefing was held 4 hours later in the same room where dead displays had returned to life. Pritchard stood at the front with a map projected behind him. Intelligence imagery, satellite photos, data that had been gathered by resources Sarah would never see and analyzed by people she would never meet. High-value target designated broker entering our sector. Pritchard indicated a photo, middle-aged man, expensive coat, professional demeanor. He facilitates weapons transfers across the Canadian border. Intel indicates he's meeting with an American contact in 72 hours. Location unknown. We need to locate and identify that contact. Hammond leaned forward. Sir, without knowing location, search radius is massive. Sensor network will track thermal signatures within 50-kilometer radius. We'll narrow the search pattern using pattern of life analysis and known trafficking routes. Pritchard looked at Sarah. Captain Brennan, your section will provide reconnaissance support. Coordinate with network operations. She studied the terrain map. Something about it bothered her. Dead zones where elevation and topology would create sensor shadows. Places where someone who understood the technology's limitations could move unseen. She opened her mouth to suggest independent reconnaissance, then closed it. Pritchard had been clear. This base ran on integration, on protocols, on systems that had been built carefully and tested thoroughly. She had been here less than 12 hours. Challenging his approach now would accomplish nothing except confirming his concerns about her judgment. Understood, sir. After the briefing, she approached him privately, waited until others had filed out, chose her words carefully. Sir, request permission to run independent reconnaissance tomorrow. Survey dead zones in the sensor network coverage. Denied. His tone was flat. Final. We work as integrated team here, Captain. You proved your point earlier with the OPFOR. Now prove you can work within our established systems. Sir, the terrain has elevation features that create natural sensor shadows where... I said denied, Captain. He met her eyes. I appreciate initiative, but I need to know you can follow orders as effectively as you can shoot. Are we clear? Crystal, sir. She saluted, left. But her mind was already working on logistics, equipment she would need, routes she could take. Because she had learned something from Marcus Cole that went beyond wind reading and shooting. She had learned that sometimes the difference between following orders and doing what needed to be done was measured in lives saved or lost. And sometimes a soldier had to choose which mattered more, the regulation or the result. Her billet was a corner space in modular housing, small, functional, cold enough that breath fogged until the heater caught up with outside temperature. She set her gear down with care, hung her uniform, cleaned her rifle with movements that had become meditation, bore brush, patches, solvent, oil. Each step performed exactly the same way every time until the metal gleamed and the action cycled smooth as water. The engraving caught light from the bare bulb overhead. MC, the wind never lies. She traced the letters with one finger, felt the worn smoothness, remembered Marcus Cole's hands on this same stock, teaching her to feel what could not be measured, to trust what sensors could not show. He had been 41 when he died, old for a master sergeant still running field operations, old enough that most of his peers had moved to instructor positions or desk jobs or retirement. But he had stayed operational because he believed that some things could only be taught in the field. Some lessons only learned when the stakes were real. She remembered the last time she had seen him. Different base, different mission. He had been preparing for Granite Falls operation, training exercise in rough terrain. He had shown her this rifle, explained why he still carried it despite newer options being available. Technology's great until it fails, he had said. Then you need fundamentals. This rifle doesn't need batteries, doesn't need network connection, doesn't need anything except bullets and someone who knows how to read wind. Learn these fundamentals, Sarah. Learn them so deep they become instinct. Because someday you'll be in a situation where all the technology in the world won't help you. And on that day, this is all you'll have. He had handed her the rifle. If something happens to me, you take this. You keep these methods alive. Promise me. She had promised, not understanding why he was asking, not knowing it was the last conversation they would have. 3 weeks later, Operation Granite Falls happened. Training accident, they said. Equipment failure. Master Sergeant Marcus Cole killed. 3 other casualties. Investigation classified. Details restricted by order of Brigadier General Victor Kane. She had attended the private service, received the rifle from his widow, carried it ever since. Now, 2 years later, sitting in a cold room at a base she had arrived at that morning, she found herself thinking about details that had never quite made sense. Training accident that required classification. Equipment failure that killed multiple experienced personnel. Investigation restricted by a general. Questions she had not asked because soldiers learned not to question official narratives. Because challenging classifications ended careers. Because sometimes the Army decided certain things were better left unexamined. But the questions remain, quiet, persistent, growing louder with each passing month. At 0200 hours, Sarah left her billet carrying minimal gear. Rifle, basic load, night vision she would not use because electronic signatures could be detected by anyone monitoring the right frequencies. She moved through base shadows with practiced ease. Gate security was focused outward. Interior patrols followed predictable patterns. She slipped through perimeter fence at a maintenance access point that security had marked for repair, but not yet fixed. Beyond the wire, the forest waited. Cold, dark, unforgiving of mistakes. She moved 3 kilometers through terrain that sensors should have been tracking. Reached an overlook position that provided clear view of base and surrounding approaches. Settled into hide position and waited. This was the part that separated professional snipers from shooters. The waiting, the stillness, the ability to remain motionless for hours while muscles cramped and cold seeped through layers and every instinct screamed to move, shift, adjust. But motion was detection. Motion was death. So she waited. Dawn came slowly, gray light that revealed landscape in increments. She watched through her scope, not looking for anything specific, just reading terrain, learning dead zones, understanding where sensors would fail and where human observation would succeed. Then she saw movement, 1,100 meters from her position. Figure moving with discipline and caution. Professional, not casual hiker, not lost hunter. Someone who knew how to move in hostile terrain without being detected. She tracked him through her scope, watched as he used terrain to mask approach, watched as he avoided sight lines where base sensors would catch him, watched as he established observation position with clear view of Ironwood's northern gate. He was watching the base, learning patterns, recording information. She could take the shot. Range was well within her capability. Wind was favorable. 1 round. Problem solved. But shooting him would reveal her position, would require explaining why she was 3 kilometers outside base perimeter without authorization, would create more questions than it answered. Instead, she watched him watch the base, memorized his face, his equipment, his technique, filed it all away for later consideration. Then she heard it. Sound behind her, branch breaking under weight, footsteps approaching her position from the east. She rolled silently, brought rifle around, found target through scope. Woman, military bearing, professional movement, 30 meters away and closing. The woman stopped, raised her hand slowly. Empty, palms out. Easy, ghost, I'm friendly. Sarah kept the rifle aimed center mass. Identify yourself. Someone who knew Marcus Cole. The woman stepped into better light. Sarah's breath caught. She knew that face. Knew it from photos, from mission briefings, from classified files she should not have seen but had. We need to talk. I said identify yourself. Lieutenant Rachel Torres. I was on Cole's team, Granite Falls operation. Sarah's finger tightened on trigger. File says there was only 1 casualty, Cole, no other personnel mentioned. File's wrong. Rachel's voice was calm, steady, like someone who had practiced this conversation in her mind many times. 6 of us went in, 3 came out, Marcus and 2 others didn't. And the reason I'm standing here instead of being listed in that file is because someone very powerful wanted me erased from the record. Why? Because Granite Falls wasn't training accident. It was betrayal from inside. And the person who betrayed us is arriving here in 72 hours. The wind shifted, cold air from the north carrying scents of pine and snow. Sarah maintained her aim, maintained her position, but her mind was racing through implications. You're telling me someone set up Cole's team, got him killed deliberately. I'm telling you, Brigadier General Victor Kane sold Marcus and 5 other soldiers to enemy forces for money. And now he's coming here to this base for an inspection that's scheduled to coincide exactly with Broker's arrival in this sector. Rachel took 1 slow step forward. That's not coincidence, Captain. That's Kane finishing what he started 2 years ago. Why would I believe you? Because Marcus left something for you in that rifle, something Kane will kill to get. Check the buttstock, hidden compartment, GPS chip, evidence location. Rachel's expression was intense, urgent. Don't trust command, don't trust sensors, trust what Marcus taught you. And when you need help, contact me. She handed Sarah a frequency card, encrypted channel information. Before Sarah could respond, Rachel melted into the forest, moving with the same professional skill she had demonstrated arriving, gone in seconds, leaving Sarah alone with questions that had no good answers and implications that threatened to unravel everything she thought she understood about Marcus Cole's death. She looked at the rifle in her hands, at the stock, at wood that had seemed solid and unchanging. Hidden compartment. She'd examined it more carefully than she ever had before. Found seams so subtle she had missed it in 2 years of daily maintenance. Worked it open with her knife tip. Inside, exactly as Rachel had described, was a micro SD card wrapped in paper. The paper had Cole's handwriting. She recognized it immediately. Precise, economical, no wasted words. Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Kane sold Granite Falls. Proof on card. Don't confront him. He's protected. Find Rachel. She'll know what to do. Trust the wind. Trust yourself. MC. Her hands shook as she read it again. Then again, processing implications that felt too large to contain in conscious thought. Marcus Cole had known he was going into compromised operation, had known betrayal was coming from inside, had prepared evidence and hidden it where only she would find it, had trusted her to finish what he could not. And now Kane was coming to Ironwood in 72 hours. She looked at the observation position where hostile watcher had been. Empty now, he had moved while she was distracted, professional enough to recognize opportunity and exploit it. She packed her equipment, returned to base using different route than she had left, reached her billet without detection, sat on her cot holding SD card that contained proof of treason and murder, inserted it into her personal laptop. Off network, no connection that could be monitored or traced. The files opened, audio recordings, financial transactions, photographs, everything Rachel had claimed, everything Cole had died gathering. General Victor Kane's voice coordinating with enemy forces during Granite Falls. Wire transfers from offshore accounts. Photos of Kane meeting with broker months before the operation. Evidence that would destroy a general's career. That would reveal systematic betrayal going back years. That would implicate others in chain of command who had helped cover it up. Evidence that Kane would kill to keep hidden. She sat in a cold room looking at proof that everything she had been told about Marcus Cole's death was lie. That the training accident had been assassination. That the man responsible for killing her mentor and 5 other soldiers was arriving at this base in less than 3 days. The smart move was take evidence to FBI. Military investigators, someone outside Kane's reach, let them handle it through proper channels. But proper channels had failed Marcus Cole. Proper channels had covered up his murder. Proper channels had let Kane continue operating for 2 years, selling intelligence, causing deaths, profiting from betrayal. Smart move would keep her safe, would protect her career, would let justice system handle Kane eventually, maybe if enough pressure was applied and enough people cared. But Sarah Brennan had not become a sniper because she made smart moves. She had become a sniper because she understood that sometimes the shot needed to be taken regardless of what regulations said, that sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting consequences. Marcus Cole had trusted her with this evidence, had died gathering it, had spent his last moments making sure it survived even if he did not. She owed him more than smart moves. She owed him completion. The morning briefing brought new intelligence. Broker was moving ahead of schedule, meeting with his American contact in 48 hours instead of 72. Location still unknown, but search radius narrowing. Sensor network identifying possible sites. Pritchard looked tired, lines around his eyes that had not been there yesterday. The weight of command in posture and expression. We have 48 hours to locate this meeting. I need every asset operational. Captain Brennan, your section will coordinate with sensor team. Hammond has identified 14 possible locations based on terrain analysis and thermal patterns. 14 locations. Too many to cover. Too dispersed to monitor effectively. Sarah studied the map, thought about terrain, about wind patterns, about how someone trying to avoid detection would move through this landscape, about dead zones and sensor coverage. She saw it. Pattern that sensors could not identify because they were looking at data instead of landscape, because they measured heat signatures instead of understanding human behavior. The meeting would be at abandoned mining complex. Grid X-ray 7, 18 kilometers north. Elevated position, multiple approach routes. Most importantly, situated in valley where thermal sensors were degraded by temperature inversion that occurred naturally in this terrain. Place where technology failed and fundamentals mattered. She started to speak, then stopped. Pritchard had made his position clear. Work within systems, follow protocols. She could suggest X-ray 7, back it with reasoning about terrain and sensor limitations, make her case professionally, and be ignored because she was new, because she carried old rifle, because she had already demonstrated disregard for orders by leaving base last night even though no one knew it yet. Or she could go there herself, confirm the location, bring back proof that could not be dismissed. The smart move was follow orders. The right move was finish what Marcus Cole started. She remained silent through the briefing, accepted her assigned sector, acknowledged coordination requirements, said all the correct things in the correct tone, and planned her unauthorized departure for that night. Her radio crackled at 1400 hours. Mandatory training exercise. Full section. Pritchard running live fire qualification to validate integrated operations between old methods and new systems. He wanted to see how traditional observation combined with sensor technology, wanted to prove that integration was superior to either approach alone. The range was set up at 1,200 meters, target arrays at multiple distances, wind conditions natural and variable. Perfect test of skill and systems. Hammond shot first with his Mk-13 in full sensor suite, ballistic computer calculating trajectory, atmospheric sensors measuring wind at 5-second intervals, thermal tracking confirming target location, technology doing what technology did best. His group was 6 inches at 1,200 meters. Solid, professional, exactly what modern training produced. Wade shot next, younger, less experienced, but technically proficient. His group was slightly larger, 8 inches, still within acceptable parameters. Then Sarah's turn. She settled into position with rifle that predated most of the soldiers watching. No ballistic computer, no atmospheric sensors, no thermal tracking, just wood and metal and glass that focused light. She closed her eyes, felt wind on her face, listened to sound it made moving through vegetation at distance, opened eyes and watched mirage through scope, saw ripple patterns that indicated wind speed and direction at target location, breathed out slowly, found that space between heartbeats where body became still and mind became clear and the shot became inevitable rather than possible. Fired. The group measured 4.5 inches at 1,200 meters. Silence. Hammond checked his spotting scope twice. Wade's expression shifted from interest to something approaching awe. Morrison nodded slowly, recognizing what he was seeing. Pritchard said nothing for a long moment. Then he walked to Sarah's position, looked at her rifle, looked at target, looked at her. How did you calculate wind without sensors? I didn't calculate, sir. I listened. To what? To what Sergeant Cole taught me. What his instructor taught him. Knowledge that doesn't require batteries or network connection. Knowledge that survives when everything else fails. Pritchard considered this, then nodded once. Dismissed. As the section packed equipment, Wade approached her quietly. Ma'am, can I ask something? Go ahead, specialist. How long before I could shoot like that? She looked at him, saw eagerness, genuine desire to learn. Same quality Marcus Cole must have seen in her years ago when she was young and hungry and convinced that technology had all the answers. 6 months if you're serious, but you'll have to stop trusting sensors to tell you everything. You'll have to learn to see what they can't measure. I want to learn, ma'am. Then starting tomorrow, we train. Old methods, new systems. Learn both. Trust neither completely. Night came with temperature drop that made breath painful and exposed skin dangerous. Sarah prepared her gear with care. Minimal load, everything she needed, nothing she didn't. Rifle, ammunition, basic survival equipment, radio set to encrypted frequency Rachel had provided. At 0200 hours, she slipped through same maintenance gap and perimeter fence. Moved into forest that felt colder and more hostile than previous night. Navigated by starlight and memory. 18 kilometers through terrain that would take 6 hours to cover safely. She reached Grid Ray 7 as dawn approached. The mining complex was exactly as satellite imagery had shown. Multiple buildings in various states of decay, vehicle access from 3 directions. Elevated position that provided clear view of approaches, but also limited routes for anyone trying to leave quickly. She established observation post 800 meters east. Concealed position with good sight lines, settled in to wait. And wait. Hours passed, cold seeped through layers, muscles cramped, mind wandered. This was the reality of sniper operations that no training could fully prepare someone for. The grinding patience, the physical discomfort, the mental discipline required to maintain focus when nothing was happening and might not happen for hours or days. But she waited, because Marcus Cole had taught her to wait, because good intelligence was worth discomfort, because sometimes the most important action was perfect stillness. At 1100 hours, movement. Black SUV approaching from north. Civilian vehicle but moving with military precision. It stopped at main building. Man exited. She recognized him immediately from intelligence photos. The broker. He entered building. Disappeared from view. Sarah keyed her radio, encrypted frequency. Rachel, I'm at X-ray 7. Broker is here. Rachel's voice came back immediately. Confirm location. I'm 40 minutes out. 15 minutes later, second vehicle arrived. Military helicopter. Not standard transport. Executive model. Man exited. Sarah's scope found his face. Felt recognition like physical blow. Brigadier General Victor Kane. The man who had killed Marcus Cole. Who had sold intelligence for profit. Who had betrayed soldiers under his command. Standing 200 meters away. Unaware he was being watched. Unaware evidence of his crimes existed. Unaware that the sniper observing him was woman whose mentor he had murdered. Her finger found trigger. Muscle memory taking over. Range was easy, win minimal. She could take the shot, end him. Justice delivered at 1,200 meters per second. But killing Kane without exposing larger conspiracy meant others would escape. Meant system that enabled his treason would survive. Meant Marcus Cole's death would be avenged but not explained. She needed more than Kane's death. She needed his confession, his contacts, his network. She needed proof that would burn it all down. So she watched him enter the building, watched him meet with broker, watched them conduct business that was treason and murder dressed in professional courtesies. And she planned. Rachel arrived 90 minutes later, took position beside Sarah without sound, looked through her own scope at building where Kane and broker were meeting. How long have they been inside? 2 hours. What's your play? Sarah considered. The smart move was call Pritchard. Report location, let proper authorities handle arrest and investigation. But Kane had powerful friends, connections that had buried evidence for 2 years, resources that could make problems disappear, including witnesses and soldiers who asked too many questions. I'm going in, Sarah said, getting records, physical proof. Broker keeps transaction logs, everything documented. I get those logs, we have evidence that can't be buried. Rachel looked at her. That's infiltration mission. You're one person with precision rifle, not equipped for close quarters. Then provide overwatch. If I don't come out in 30 minutes, take whatever shot you can and run. Sarah, this is suicide. This is finishing what Marcus started. She met Rachel's eyes. You can help or you can watch. Either way, I'm going in. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll cover you, but we do this smart. No hero moves. You get in, get the logs, get out. Anything goes wrong, I extract you by force. Clear? Clear. Sarah moved toward the complex, using terrain to mask her approach. Mining tunnels provided access beneath main building, old infrastructure that satellite imagery had not shown, that security had not considered because it was supposedly sealed decades ago. She forced entry through rusted gate, descended into darkness that smelled of earth and abandonment, navigated by feel and sound, emerged in sub-basement of main building, found stairs, ascended slowly, reached first floor, heard voices above. Kane and broker still in meeting. Located office that held filing cabinets. Picked lock with knife blade, open cabinet. Inside were ledgers, transaction records, names, dates, amounts, years of trafficking and treason documented in precise handwriting. Kane's name appeared dozens of times. So did other names, officers she recognized, politicians, contractors, network that extended far beyond one general and one broker. She photographed pages with camera that would create encrypted backup, then took physical documents, stuffed them in pack, evidence that could not be denied or explained away. Alarm shattered silence. She had triggered something. Pressure sensor, motion detector, something she had missed in her infiltration. Voices shouting, footsteps converging. She ran, back to stairs, down to basement, through tunnel. Behind her, pursuit. Professional, organized. Not random guards, but trained security team. She emerged from tunnel exit to find 3 men waiting, weapons raised, professional stance. Rachel's voice crackled in her radio. Sarah, you're surrounded. West side has blocking force. East side is your only clear route, but they're moving to cut you off. Sarah moved east at full sprint. Rifle slung across back, documents in pack. Guard fired behind her. Round passed close enough, she felt displacement. She reached tree line, dove into cover, rounds impacting around her position. Return fire, not aim shots, suppression fire to buy seconds. Rachel's rifle spoke from 800 meters away. Precision shot that dropped one pursuer, then another. Bought Sarah time to move, put distance between herself and complex. But pursuit was professional. They had vehicles, radio coordination, training that matched her own. This was not escape. This was delay. And delay only worked if rescue arrived before pursuit caught her. She keyed radio to Pritchard's frequency, unsecured channel that everyone would hear, including Kane. Calculated risk that felt less like choice and more like necessity. Colonel Pritchard, this is Captain Brennan. Authorization code Ghost 7 actual. Requesting immediate extraction, grid X-ray 7, emergency priority. Pritchard's voice came back immediately. Controlled anger barely contained. Captain, explain your position. You were not authorized to. Sir, I have evidence of treason. High level, I'm being pursued by hostile forces. I need extraction now. Different voice interrupted. Major Sandra Voss, Pritchard's second in command. Sarah had met her briefly during check-in. Professional, competent, trusted by Pritchard. Negative, Captain. Colonel Pritchard is unavailable. Return to base for debriefing. Something about Voss's tone triggered warning. Too controlled, too precise, like someone who had been expecting this call. Sarah ran through forest, pursuit closing, made decision that felt right even though she could not explain why. Major Voss, I know what you are. I have proof. Kane's records. Your name is in them. 2 years of payments. Silence on Poidu. Too long, too complete. Then Voss's voice. Different now. Cold. Captain, you're making serious accusations against superior officer. I suggest you return to base immediately and we'll discuss this through proper channels. Behind Sarah, dogs barking. They had brought tracking dogs. She increased pace, ribs burning, legs protesting. But she ran because stopping meant capture, and capture meant death, and death meant Marcus Cole's evidence would be buried again. Rachel appeared ahead of her, providing covering fire, buying seconds. How many pursuing? 20, maybe more. They have dogs, vehicles, radio coordination. Then we make stand. Rachel pointed to rocky outcrop. Defensible position, limited approaches. We hold until Pritchard arrives or we die trying. Sarah reached the rocks, took position, checked ammunition, 16 rounds in rifle, 40 in sidearm, against 20 professional soldiers and dogs. She thought about Marcus Cole, about evidence in her pack, about soldiers who had died because Kane had sold them. Thought about honor and duty and the difference between following orders and doing what needed to be done. Drew breath, settled rifle into shooting position. Watched tree line where pursuit would emerge. Rachel beside her, 2 snipers, 2 rifles, against odds that made mathematics irrelevant. For Marcus, Rachel said quietly. For everyone Kane killed, Sarah replied. Dogs burst from tree line, 200 meters, closing fast. Sarah fired. First dog dropped, second, third. Guards behind them. She shifted target. Professional shooter in tactical gear at 150 meters. Fired, hit center mass, guard fell. Return fire turned rocks into steel rain. Fragments cutting face, blood mixing with sweat. She fired again, different angle, guard taking cover. Hit, down, but they kept coming. Professional assault. Coordinated, disciplined, exactly what she had expected and feared. Rachel's rifle spoke steadily. Precision shots, buying time measured in heartbeats and breaths. Sarah's ammunition counter dropped. 14 rounds, 12, 10. Guards at 70 meters, too close for comfort, perfect range for assault. She fired, missed, wind gust at wrong moment. Corrected, fired, hit. 8 rounds remaining. Rachel wounded, shoulder shot, still firing, still fighting. Sarah grabbed her pack. Inside were documents that would destroy Kane's network. Expose conspiracy, honor Marcus Cole's sacrifice. She threw pack toward Rachel. Get this to Pritchard. No one else. Tell him Voss is compromised. Tell him everything. Rachel caught pack. What are you? Buying you time, now go. Sarah stood, drew sidearm, moved from cover. Guards saw her, shifted fire. She ran lateral, drawing attention, making herself target while Rachel escaped with evidence. Rounds impacted around her. One hit her vest, knocked breath away. She kept moving. Fired sidearm at closest guard, hit, down. Fired at second guard, missed. Corrected, hit. Magazine empty, dropped magazine. Reloaded. Muscle memory functioning while conscious thought struggled with pain and exhaustion. More guards, always more guards. This was not battle she could win, only delay. She reached different position. Boulder providing momentary cover. Checked ammo. 3 magazines remaining for sidearm. 6 rounds in rifle. Heard engines. Vehicles approaching from base direction. Either rescue or final assault. She loaded her rifle, found target through scope. Guard coordinating assault. Leader. Take him down, create confusion. Breathed, steadied, fired. Hit. Vehicles broke through tree line. Military trucks, FOB ironwood markings. Pritchard's voice on loudspeaker. All hostile forces stand down. This is Colonel Pritchard, United States Army. You are engaging federal personnel. Cease fire immediately. Guards hesitated, confused, caught between orders from Kane and military authority from Pritchard. In that hesitation, Sarah ran. Toward Pritchard's vehicles, toward safety, toward chance that evidence might survive even if she did not. She reached first vehicle as guards opened fire wagon. Round hit her leg. She fell, crawled, hands pulling her into vehicle. Door slamming, vehicle accelerating. Wade's face above her. "Ma'am, we got you." She grabbed his collar, blood in her mouth. "Documents. Rachel has them. Grid Victor 9. Find her. Protect her." "Ma'am, you need medical." "Find her. That's an order." Consciousness wavering. Pain becoming abstract thing that existed separately from thought. She looked through vehicle window at Forest disappearing behind them, at Pursuit falling back, at FOB Ironwood growing larger ahead. Thought about Marcus Cole, about justice delayed, about evidence that might finally expose truth. Thought about how much it cost to be soldier who did right thing instead of smart thing. Thought about wind that never lied and men who always did. Then thought stopped. Darkness. She woke in base medical, shoulder bandaged, leg bandaged, ribs taped, face feeling like it had argued with gravel and lost. Pritchard sat beside her bed. He looked older than he had that morning, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Captain Brennan, you're awake." She tried to sit. Pain convinced her to remain horizontal. "Did you find Rachel?" "We found her. She's secure, and she brought us very interesting reading material." He pulled chair closer. "Documents proving Brigadier General Victor Kane has been selling intelligence for 2 years, proving Major Voss facilitated those sales, proving network that extends into Pentagon and private sector." "Kane? In custody? FBI has him. Voss too. This is federal investigation now. Treason, conspiracy, multiple counts." Pritchard paused. "Captain, what you did was against every regulation, every protocol, every order I gave you." "Yes, sir." "It was also right." He met her eyes. "Marcus Cole would be proud. And I should have listened when you said the terrain had dead zones. Should have trusted your judgment instead of insisting on protocols." "Sir, protocols exist for reasons." "They do, but sometimes the best soldiers are ones who know when to break them." He stood. "You'll face review board, unauthorized departure, disobeying direct orders, engaging hostile forces without clearance. By regulation, I have to charge you." "Understood, sir." "Those charges will be dropped after your Medal of Honor is approved. Until then, you're on medical leave. Heal up. We'll need you back soon." He left. Sarah lay in bed looking at ceiling, thinking about Marcus Cole, about evidence that had finally come to light, about justice that had taken 2 years and cost more than it should have. The rifle leaned against wall beside her bed. Someone had brought it from her billet, cleaned it, maintained it exactly as it should be maintained. On the stock, engraving caught light from window. "M to the wind never lies." She closed her eyes, felt exhaustion pulling her towards sleep that body needed and mind resisted. Before darkness took her again, she whispered words meant for mentor, who could not hear them, but might somehow know. "Mission complete, Marcus. We got him." Outside her window, winter continued its hold on Montana wilderness. But spring would come, eventually, the way justice had come, delayed, difficult, but inevitable for those with patience to wait and courage to act. The wind moved through trees beyond the wire, carrying cold, carrying change, carrying forward the lessons that old soldiers taught young ones. That knowledge survived not in books or databases, but in people willing to carry it. Captain Sarah Brennan slept and dreamed of wind that never lied and men who sometimes did, and the difference between the two that defined what it meant to be soldier worth the name. The gunfire faded into silence that felt heavier than sound. Smoke hung in cold air like questions without answers. Sarah Brennan slumped behind the boulder that had become her final defensive position. Blood on her shoulder where round had punched through, not deep, through and through. Painful but not fatal if she could reach medical treatment before blood loss became critical. Around her, the evidence of engagement. 4 guards down, dogs neutralized. Brass casings scattered across frozen ground like seeds that would never grow. But ammunition exhausted. Magazine empty. Rifle dry. And still they came. Professional soldiers who understood that sometimes victory was just a matter of patience, of waiting for enemy to run out of bullets before running out of will. She heard them regrouping 60 meters away, voices coordinating next to Salt. They knew she was wounded, knew she could not run, knew that time was their ally and her enemy. Then new sound cut through her pain and their planning. Different weapon, different angle, precision rifle speaking language she understood in bones and blood. 3 shots in 4 seconds. Professional, disciplined. and exactly what Marcus Cole would have done if he were still alive to do it. Guards caught in crossfire they had not anticipated, confusion replacing confidence. Orders shouted. A return fire directed at wrong position, and in that confusion, retreat. Not rout, professional withdrawal, but withdrawal nonetheless. Voice came through radio static. Female, familiar, determined. Ghost, stay down, cavalry's here. Through smoke and pain, figure approached. Rifle raised, movement tactical and sure. Lieutenant Rachel Torres emerged from forest like answer to prayer Sarah had not known she was praying. Rachel reached her position. Assessed wounds with eyes that had seen combat medicine practiced in places without hospitals or hope. Her expression shifted from concern to calculation to something approaching relief. You're terrible at following orders. Sarah tried to laugh, managed something between cough and groan. Learn from the best. Rachel helped her stand. Sarah's leg protested. Ribs screamed. Shoulder added its voice to chorus of pain that threatened to overwhelm consciousness. But she remained upright because falling meant dying, and dying meant documents in Rachel's pack would never reach people who needed to see them. How did you survive? Sarah managed words between breaths that felt like knives. Your extraction route passed near my position after I broke contact with the kill team that found me earlier. Figured you'd need backup eventually. Cole taught me to trust instincts. Rachel adjusted Sarah's weight across her shoulders. Now move. More hostiles coming. Can hear vehicles. They moved together through forest that felt colder than it had any right to be. Each step was negotiation between necessity and agony. 2 kilometers to potential rescue. 2 kilometers that might as well have been 200 given Sarah's condition. Behind them, sounds of pursuit resumed. Professional, organized, patient. Wade's voice crackled through radio. Encrypted channel. Hope transmitted through static. Ghost, Hammer 2. We have your position. Colonel Pritchard is moving to intercept. Grid Tango 5. Can you reach it? Sarah looked at map coordinates on her wrist display. 2.3 kilometers. Through rough terrain. With wounds that were bleeding through bandages, Rachel had improvised from torn uniform. Affirm, 20 minutes. You have 15. Hostiles are flanking from north and west. After 15, window closes. Rachel met Sarah's eyes. Question unspoken but understood. Can you make it? Sarah thought about Marcus Cole, about evidence in pack on Rachel's back, about soldiers who had died because Kane had sold them, about justice that had waited 2 years and could not wait any longer. Let's move. They ran, not sprint, not jog, something between determination and desperation that burned muscles and lungs in equal measure. Rachel providing support, Sarah providing will. Both drawing on reserves they had not known they possessed until this moment when possession became requirement. Forest opened into clearing, frozen stream cutting through valley floor. No cover, no concealment, just open ground that had to be crossed because alternative was giving up, and neither woman had giving up in their vocabulary. Halfway across, Rachel stopped. Thermal signature, 300 meters west, moving to intercept. Sarah brought rifle up despite shoulder screaming protest. Through scope, heat signature became human shape, became armed hostile. Professional security contractor. Not military, but trained by military. Dangerous because he knew how to be dangerous. Range was 320 meters. Wind corridoring from northeast. Cold air creating mirage that made range finding difficult. Shoulder wound making steady aim nearly impossible. She breathed. Found that space Cole had taught her to find. Where pain existed but did not matter. Where body obeyed mind, regardless of what body wanted. Fired. Hit. Hostile dropped. Keep moving. They reached tree line as 2 more hostiles appeared behind them. Rachel turned, fired twice. Both targets down. Professional shooting that would have made Cole proud and probably did wherever he was watching from. Grid Tango 5 materialized through trees. Small clearing where helicopter could land. No helicopter yet, but sound of rotors approaching from south. Pritchard's extraction bird. Salvation measured in minutes if they could survive those minutes. Sarah collapsed at clearing edge. Could not take another step. Body had given everything it had and was now presenting bill for services rendered. Rachel took defensive position, covering approaches, buying time with ammunition and skill. Helicopter broke tree line. Military transport. Door gunner scanning for targets. Pilot bringing bird down fast because slow meant vulnerable and vulnerable meant casualties. Skids touched snow. Wade jumped out before touchdown complete. Ran to Sarah's position with medical kit already open. Hammond provided covering fire from helicopter door. Professional team executing professional rescue. Wade's hands moved over Sarah's wounds. Assessment automatic. Training overriding concern. Ma'am, you're losing blood. Need to get you stable before... Documents. Sarah grabbed his gear harness. Blood and mouth made words taste like copper and determination. Rachel has them. Grid Victor 9. Protect her. Ma'am, you need medical attention now. That's an order, specialist. Find her. Protect evidence. Nothing else matters. Rachel appeared beside them. Pack containing documents still secure on her back. Face showing exhaustion that matched Sarah's, but without the blood. Already here, Captain. We move together or not at all. Wade pulled Sarah toward Harry helicopter. Rachel followed. Hammond laid down the suppression fire as more hostiles emerged from tree line. Rounds impacting around landing zone. Pilot increased throttle, preparing for departure that needed to happen immediately. They dragged Sarah through helicopter door. Rachel climbed in behind. Wade and Hammond provided covering fire until pilot lifted off. Clearing fell away beneath them. Pursuit became small figures that grew smaller. Danger became memory that would take longer to fade than physical wounds. Sarah looked at Rachel, at pack containing evidence that had cost so much to obtain, at documents that would destroy Kane's network and expose conspiracy that had killed Marcus Cole. Did we get everything? Rachel nodded. Transaction logs, communications records, financial documents, everything broker kept. Everything that proves Kane's treason and identifies his network. She paused. Your infiltration worked, Sarah. We have it all. Consciousness wavered, pain and blood loss making thoughts slippery and hard to hold. But before darkness took her, Sarah managed words that needed saying. For Marcus, Rachel's hand found hers, squeezed once, for all of them. Then darkness. Not death, just body claiming payment for what mind had demanded. Sleep that was half unconsciousness. Dreams that were half memory. Marcus Cole teaching her to read wind. To trust fundamentals when technology failed. To understand that some knowledge survived not in databases but in people willing to carry it forward. She woke in base medical. Same room as before, but different circumstances. More guards at door. More security protocols. More sense that what happened in mountains had changed everything about how Ironwood operated. Pritchard sat beside bed. He looked older than he had hours ago. Lines around eyes that spoke of decisions made and consequences accepted. His uniform was field uniform, not dress, like man who had been operational rather than administrative. Captain Brennan, welcome back. She tried to sit. Pain suggested remaining horizontal was better choice. How long was I out? 6 hours. Long enough for doctors to stabilize you. Long enough for me to read documents Lieutenant Torres brought back. He leaned forward. Long enough for me to understand exactly how deep this conspiracy goes and how many people I thought I could trust were part of it. Kane, in federal custody. FBI has him at secure location. He's facing treason charges, multiple counts, each carrying the death penalty. Pritchard's expression was grim. But Kane's just beginning. Documents you recovered name 15 other officers, 6 defense contractors, 3 members of Congress. Network that's been operating for at least 5 years, maybe longer. Voss? Major Voss is also in custody. She was Kane's primary facilitator at Ironwood, provided intelligence on our operations, monitored communications, ensured any investigation would be buried. He paused. I trusted her for 3 years, never suspected. That's on me. Sarah understood that particular kind of guilt, the kind that came from trusting wrong person, from missing signs that seemed obvious in retrospect, from being good soldier who followed protocols when protocols themselves were compromised. Sir, you couldn't have known. I should have. That's what command means. Knowing, being responsible. He stood, walked to window, looked out at base. He commanded, but what's done is done. Now we deal with consequences. What consequences, sir? Pritchard turned. You conducted unauthorized operation, violated direct orders, engaged hostile forces without clearance. Technically, I should court-martial you. Yes, sir. I'm not going to. Sarah waited. What you did was operationally sound, tactically brilliant, strategically necessary. You exposed treason that would have continued indefinitely if you had followed my orders to work within established systems. He returned to chair beside bed. You also saved lives. Documents you recovered identified 3 planned attacks on U.S. forces. Attacks that would have succeeded because Kane was providing intelligence on our defensive positions and response times. Those attacks won't happen now because of what you did. Marcus Cole deserves credit, sir. He gathered initial evidence, died protecting it. I just finished what he started. Marcus Cole was good soldier, best I trained with. Pritchard's voice carried weight of memory. But he'd be first to say that gathering evidence means nothing if no one has courage to act on it. You had that courage, Captain. Against my orders, against regulations. You did what needed doing. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just space where respect existed without requiring words. Finally, Pritchard spoke again. You'll face review board. Formality. But outcome is predetermined. Your actions will be classified. Operation that never officially happened. But your record will reflect commendation for exceptional performance during classified mission. And promotion to major. Sir, I don't need promotion. Army needs good officers who understand when to follow orders and when to break them. That's you, Major Brennan. He stood. Heal up. We'll need you operational soon. This investigation is just beginning. Kane's network extends beyond what those documents show. We'll need operators we can trust to help dismantle it. He left. Sarah lay in bed thinking about Marcus Cole. About cost of doing right thing when right thing conflicted with regulations. About soldiers who died because other soldiers valued rules more than results. The rifle leaned against wall beside bed. Someone had brought it from wherever it had been during extraction. Cleaned it, maintained it, respected it. On stock, engraving caught afternoon light filtering through window. To the wind never lies. She closed eyes. Let exhaustion pull her towards sleep, body needed. But before consciousness faded completely, she heard Doctor open. Footsteps approaching bed, she opened eyes. Lucas Wade stood there, young face showing concern and something else. Determination, maybe, or recognition. Ma'am, sorry to disturb you. Just wanted to check if you needed anything. I'm fine, specialist. He nodded, started to leave, stopped. Ma'am, can I ask something? Go ahead. What you did, in the mountains, against those odds. How did you know you'd make it back? Sarah considered the question. Thought about honest answer versus reassuring answer. Chose honesty because Wade deserved truth more than comfort. I didn't know. Could have died easily. Probably should have. She met his eyes. But some missions matter more than survival. Marcus Cole understood that. He gathered evidence knowing it might get him killed. I delivered that evidence knowing same thing. You make choice. Live with rules or die with purpose. Sometimes there's no middle ground. Wade absorbed this. Would you make same choice again, knowing Gwyn? Every time. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He turned to leave. Paused at door. Ma'am, whatever comes next, whatever missions you're assigned, I'm volunteering. Want to learn from you, same way you learned from Sergeant Cole. Specialist, what comes next might be dangerous. Probably will be. Kane's network won't surrender quietly. Understood, ma'am. Still volunteering. After he left, Sarah thought about generational transfer, how knowledge moved from teacher to student, how Marcus Cole had taught her, how she was now teaching Wade, how chain continued unbroken as long as someone was willing to carry it forward. 3 days passed, wounds healing slowly, body recovering faster than mine, which kept replaying engagement in mountains, analyzing decisions, questioning choices, standard practice for soldiers who survived when others did not. On 4th day, Pritchard returned. With him was man Sarah did not recognize. Civilian suit, federal identification, FBI Special Agent Williams. He looked like man who had seen too much and believed too little. Major Brennan, Agent Williams wants to debrief you regarding documents recovered from broker's facility. Williams sat, opened briefcase, pulled out folders that Sarah recognized, transaction logs she had photographed, communications she had recovered. Major, these documents are extraordinary. They prove systematic treason spanning 5 years. They identify a network of officers and contractors who've been selling intelligence to hostile actors. They provide evidence that will likely result in largest military corruption prosecution in 50 years. He paused. They also raise questions. What questions? How did you know where to find them? Broker's facility wasn't on any intelligence radar, no surveillance, no monitoring. You went straight there. How? Sarah chose words carefully. Intelligence developed through field observation and analysis of enemy behavior patterns. That's vague, Major. That's accurate, Agent Williams. He studied her. You're protecting someone. Source you don't want to reveal. I'm protecting methods that work. If I explain exactly how I developed intelligence, those methods become compromised. Williams considered this, then nodded. Fair enough, but understand something. This investigation will be long, complex, dangerous. Kane's network knows we have these documents. They'll want them back. They'll want anyone who's seen them dead. That includes you and Lieutenant Torres and anyone else involved in recovery. Understood. You'll need protection, federal marshals, secure locations, possibly relocation. Negative. Williams blinked. Major, these people have resources, connections. They've already demonstrated willingness to kill soldiers who threaten their operation. Your direct threat, they will come for you. Let them come. I'll be ready. Pritchard interrupted. Major Brennan will remain at Ironwood under military protection. We can provide security equal to federal marshals, and we have operational need for her expertise as investigation continues. Williams looked between them, recognized battle he would not win. Your choice. But when they come, don't say you weren't warned. After Williams left, Pritchard remained. You know he's right. Kane's network will try to eliminate witnesses. Yes, sir. And you're still refusing protection. I don't need protection, sir. I need mission. Pritchard smiled slightly. Thought you might say that. He pulled folder from his jacket. Task Force Atlas. Classified unit handling operations where technology limitations require human judgment. They've requested operators with your specific skill set. Interest? Sarah opened folder. Saw photos of locations around world. Middle East, Eastern Europe, Pacific Rim. Places where enemies had learned to jam sensors and hack networks. Places where old skills mattered again. What's the mission? Dismantling Kane's network. Not just arresting officers involved. Destroying infrastructure. Eliminating contacts. Ensuring this never happens again. He paused. It's dangerous, long-term, and completely off-book. If things go wrong, there's no rescue, no acknowledgement, no records. Who else is on team? Lieutenant Torres already accepted. Specialist Wade volunteered. Staff Sergeant Hammond is considering. We need 2 more operators. Thought you might have recommendations. Sarah thought about her section, about soldiers she had trained with, about who had skills and temperament for work that existed in shadows. Sergeant Chen, Specialist Morrison, both solid, both understand fundamentals. I'll reach out to them. Pritchard closed folder. This is your choice, Major. You've done enough. Exposed conspiracy, recovered evidence. You could take medical discharge, retire, let others handle cleanup. That's not how Marcus Cole would have finished this. Marcus Cole is dead. His mission isn't. Pritchard nodded slowly, like man who had expected this answer but needed to hear it spoken. Task Force Atlas reports to Fort Bragg in 30 days. Use that time to heal, to train your team, to prepare for operations that will make mountains look easy. Yes, sir. After he left, Sarah looked at folder, at photos of places where she would hunt people who had betrayed soldiers like Marcus Cole, at missions that would require every skill she possessed and some she had not yet learned. The rifle stood against wall, waiting, patient, like it had been waiting for 2 years since Marcus Cole had last cleaned it. She thought about wind that never lied, about men who always did, about difference between the two that defined what it meant to be soldier worth the name. 7 days after mountain engagement, Sarah was cleared for light duty. Wounds healed enough for movement, scars forming that would remain long after pain faded. She returned to sniper section ready to resume training, but atmosphere had changed. Something in ways soldiers looked at her, respect mixed with caution. Like they understood she operated by different rules than they did, that she would demand same from them. Hammond approached first morning back. Ma'am, section's ready for training, but we need to discuss something. Go ahead, Sergeant. What happened in mountains? Against those odds. That's not normal operations. That's not what we train for here. You're right, it's not. So what are we training for now? She thought about how to explain, how to make them understand that world had changed, that enemies had evolved, that old certainties no longer applied. We're training for missions where sensors fail, where networks get compromised, where only thing you can trust is fundamentals Marcus Cole learned from his instructor, who learned from his instructor going back generations. She paused. We're training to be soldiers who can operate when everything else stops working. Hammond considered this. That's different from integrated operations Colonel Pritchard emphasized. Pritchard's emphasis was based on assumption that our systems were secure. Now we know they weren't. Now we train for reality instead of ideal. Over following weeks, training intensified. Sarah pushed her section harder than they had been pushed before. Long-range shots without ballistic computers. Navigation without GPS. Communications without electronic encryption. Everything stripped down to fundamentals that could not be hacked or jammed or compromised. Wade excelled, young enough to be flexible, eager enough to embrace methods that older soldiers questioned. Within 2 weeks, he was reading wind almost as well as Sarah. Within 3 weeks, he was teaching other soldiers what he had learned. Hammond struggled more. His trust in technology was deep, reflexive. Letting go required unlearning years of training. But he persisted, recognizing that Sarah was right even when it felt wrong, that sensors were tools, not replacements. By end of month, Section had transformed, still capable with modern systems, but now capable without them. Hybrid operators who understood integration but did not depend on it. On final training day before Task Force Atlas deployment, Sarah took Wade to range. Same range where she had proven M24's capability weeks ago. Same distances, same wind conditions, but different purpose. 1,200 meters, standard target, no ballistic computer, no atmospheric sensors, just you and rifle and wind. Wade settled into position. She watched him work through process, reading mirage, watching vegetation, feeling wind on face. All techniques she had taught him, all methods Marcus Cole had taught her. He fired. Group measured 6 inches at 1,200 meters. Not as tight as Sarah could shoot, but better than most snipers achieve with full sensor suite, and infinitely better than anyone could shoot if sensors failed and fundamentals were all that remained. "How'd I do, ma'am?" Marcus Cole would say, "You're ready, so do I." That evening, they gathered in briefing room. Task Force Atlas team, Rachel, Wade, Hammond, Chen, Morrison, 5 operators who would hunt Kane's network across continents and years. 5 soldiers who understood that some missions never truly ended, just evolved into new phases requiring new approaches. Pritchard addressed them with gravity that situations like this required. You deploy tomorrow to Fort Bragg for additional training and mission planning. What comes after that is classified, dangerous, and necessary. Kane's network extends further than we initially believed, deeper into military and government. You'll be hunting people with resources and connections we're still identifying. He paused, looked at each operator individually. You won't have backup, won't have support. If things go wrong, there's no cavalry coming. You'll be alone in hostile territory relying on skills and each other. Some of you won't come back. That's reality of this work. Anyone wants out, now's the time. No one moved. No one spoke. Acceptance transmitted through silence. Good. Pritchard closed his folder. One more thing. Major Brennan will command this team. Her call sign is Ghost. You follow her orders absolutely. In field, she has complete operational authority. Clear? Affirmatives around room. After briefing, Rachel approached Sarah privately. You ready for this? Commanding team hunting network that's already killed dozens of soldiers? Ready as I'll ever be. That's not answer, Sarah. Sarah looked at rifle resting against wall, at engraving that had become something between instruction and prayer. Marcus Cole spent 20 years learning fundamentals, taught me in 2. I'm teaching Wade in 1 month. Knowledge accelerates when stakes are high enough. Kane's network raised stakes. We respond accordingly. And if we fail, then someone else continues mission. Knowledge doesn't die if someone carries it forward. That's what Marcus taught me, what I'm teaching Wade, what he'll teach whoever comes after him. She met Rachel's eyes. We might fail. Mission won't. Difference matters. Rachel nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Marcus chose right person to carry this forward. We'll see if you still think that after first operation. They deployed next morning. Military transport to Fort Bragg. Then classified briefings that revealed scope of Kane's network. Officers in 7 countries. Contractors in 4 continents. Intelligence being sold to hostile actors ranging from terrorists to nation-states. Network that had caused deaths of hundreds of soldiers and civilians. Network that had operated with impunity because people like Major Voss had protected it from inside. Mission was clear. Dismantle network. Eliminate key personnel. Destroy infrastructure. Do it quietly. Do it permanently. Do it in ways that would never appear in official records, but would echo through intelligence communities for decades. First operation targeted facilitator in Eastern Europe. Officer who had been selling classified positioning data to hostile forces. Data that had resulted in 3 ambushes, 17 American casualties. He lived in secured compound, protected by military security, untouchable through legal channels. Task Force Atlas made him touchable. They infiltrated under cover a diplomatic mission, established surveillance, identified patterns, found vulnerabilities that technology could not protect against because vulnerabilities were human. Guard who smoked at same time every night. Gate that closed 3 seconds slower than procedures required. Perimeter sensor with blind spot caused by terrain, feature no one had thought to correct. Sarah watched through scope from kilometer away. Rachel and Wade moved through compound like ghosts whose presence was felt but never confirmed. Hammond provided technical support, monitoring communications, jamming security systems at critical moments. Chen and Morrison secured exfiltration route. Professional operation executed with precision that came from training and trust. They extracted target without shots fired, without alarms raised, without evidence they had been there, except missing person who would never be found because Task Force Atlas had methods for ensuring certain people stayed missing. During interrogation, target revealed network contacts, names, locations, methods. Everything he knew spilled out under questioning techniques that left no marks but broke resistance anyway. Information went to federal investigators. Target went to secure facility where he would spend rest of life. Network loss facilitator and had no idea how or why. Just knew that someone was hunting them. Someone patient, someone professional, someone dangerous. Operations continued. 6 months, 8 countries, 14 targets eliminated from network. Each operation planned carefully, executed perfectly. No casualties on Task Force Atlas. No failed missions. No compromises. But network was learning, adapting, increasing security, changing patterns, becoming harder to penetrate with each successful operation. Sarah studied intelligence reports in Temporary Operations Center, secure facility that changed location monthly, maps covering walls, photos of targets, lines connecting network nodes that revealed structure and vulnerabilities. Rachel entered. Our next target is different. Higher value, better protected. He knows we're coming. Who? Colonel Marcus Vance, Kane's second in command. He ran operational side while Kane handled political protection. Rachel pointed to photo. He's gone to ground, using resources Kane built. Security is layered, electronic and physical. He's not making mistakes we can exploit. Sarah studied Vance's file. Career officer, decorated, respected. Also traitor who had facilitated operations that killed American soldiers. Man who needed to answer for crimes but would never face legal prosecution because evidence chain was compromised. Where is he? Montana, 30 miles from Canadian border. Secured facility disguised as hunting lodge. 6 guards, sensor network, hardened communications, and he's expecting us. Then we don't disappoint him. Sarah turned to the team. Full brief in 1 hour. We leave tomorrow night. Montana in autumn was different from Montana in winter. Colors instead of white, cold that bit instead of burned. But terrain was familiar. Mountains where Sarah had learned to hunt Kane's network, where Marcus Cole had taught her fundamentals that technology could not replace. They established observation posts 3 kilometers from Vance's facility. Watched for 2 days, learning patterns, identifying weaknesses, understanding that this operation would be different from previous ones, that Vance was prepared for exactly the tactics they had used successfully elsewhere. On third night, Sarah made decision that surprised her team. We go in daylight. Hammond frowned. Ma'am, our operations have been nocturnal. We use darkness for concealment. Daylight exposes us. Vance expects night operation. He's positioned guards for nocturnal defense. Sensor network optimized for thermal detection in darkness. He's ready for everything we've done before. So we do something different, Wade said, understanding. Exactly, we adapt. Same way Marcus Cole adapted. Same way soldiers have adapted for generations when enemy learned their patterns. They moved at dawn, not full daylight, but transitional period when darkness yielded to light. Guards were tired from night watch. Relief shift not yet fully alert. Window measured in minutes, but wide enough for professionals who understood timing. Sarah led infiltration. Rachel provided overwatch. Wade and Hammond breached perimeter at weakest point, identified during surveillance. Chen and Morrison secured vehicles for exfiltration. Sarah moved through facility like she had been there before. using fundamentals that applied regardless of location, reading guards through movement patterns, anticipating responses, exploiting human factors that no security system could eliminate. She found Vance in a secure room, surrounded by communications equipment and monitoring displays. He was watching feeds from cameras covering approaches, waiting for attack he expected would come from darkness. Sarah entered room behind him, put rifle muzzle against his spine. "Colonel Vance, you're under arrest." He froze, calculating, understanding that resistance meant death and cooperation might mean survival. "Ghost, I've been expecting you, just not during daylight. People who stop adapting, stop surviving. Marcus Cole taught me that. Marcus Cole is dead. His lessons aren't." They extracted Vance without incident. Facility guards never realized he was gone until shift change revealed empty room and disabled communications. By then, Task Force Atlas was 200 kilometers away, with highest value target captured since operation began. Vance provided information during interrogation, names that made federal investigators pale, connections that extended into Pentagon and Congress, operations that had been running longer than anyone suspected. Network was bigger than Kane had admitted, deeper than documents revealed, more dangerous than anyone wanted to believe. But information came with warning. "You can't kill us all," Vance said. "Network has redundancies, backups, people you'll never identify because they're too deep, too protected. You dismantle one layer, another rises. This doesn't end, Ghost. Not with arrests, not with investigations. Only ends when someone decides cost is too high to continue." Sarah considered his words. Recognized truth mixed with psychological warfare. Yes, Network had depth. Yes, operations would continue even with key personnel eliminated. But continuation did not mean immortality. Networks could be destroyed. Required patience, required persistence, required soldiers willing to hunt until hunt was finished. "Then we'll make cost prohibitive. Simple as that." Vance smiled coldly. Marcus Cole thought same thing. Look how that ended. Marcus Cole succeeded. Evidence he gathered destroyed Kane, exposed Network, started investigation that will continue until every conspirator faces justice. He won, Colonel. He just didn't survive to see it. She left interrogation room, handed Vance to federal custody, watched as he disappeared into system designed to make certain people disappear permanently. Rachel found her afterwards. "That's 14 down. How many more?" "However many it takes." That's not answer. It's only answer that matters. Months continued. Operations across continents. Targets eliminated systematically. Network degrading under sustained pressure. But degradation was not destruction. Wounded animals were often most dangerous. Networks under attack became unpredictable. Warning came through classified channels. Intelligence indicating Network was planning retaliation. Not against Task Force Atlas directly because they operated in shadows. Against something visible. Something that would send message. Something that would demonstrate Network still had power despite losses. Target was identified as Forward Operating Base Ironwood. Location where operation began. Where Kane's conspiracy had been exposed. Where Major Voss had been arrested. Symbolic target that would create maximum psychological impact. Sarah read intelligence brief with growing dread. Network was planning attack on Ironwood using intelligence Kane had provided before arrest. Base layout, security protocols, response times, everything needed to conduct successful assault. Attack was scheduled for 72 hours. She called Pritchard immediately. "Sir, Network is targeting Ironwood. Full assault. You need to evacuate or massively increase security." Evacuate entire forward operating base based on intelligence that might be disinformation designed to waste resources? Pritchard's voice carried skepticism. "Ghost, we can't react to every threat. Network knows we're hunting them. They'll try to manipulate us." "Sir, this is real. Intelligence is solid. They're coming for Ironwood because it represents everything they have lost. You need to prepare. I'll increase security protocols, but I'm not evacuating. Ironwood stays operational." Sarah recognized tone that meant argument was finished. Pritchard had made decision. Would not reverse course without evidence stronger than intelligence assessment. She made her own decision. Task Force Atlas would return to Ironwood. Would be there when attack came. Would defend base using skills developed hunting Network across continents. Sometimes best defense was good offense. Sometimes you did not wait for enemy to choose battlefield. Sometimes you invited them to come where you were ready, where you had advantages, where fundamentals mattered more than resources. The wind at Ironwood never lied. Neither would Task Force Atlas. When Network came to collect bill they believed they were owed. They arrived at Ironwood 36 hours before scheduled attack. Deployed quietly, no announcements, no official acknowledgement, just operators taking positions around perimeter, learning terrain again, understanding how wind moved through this valley, how temperature inversion affected visibility, how elevation created dead zones in sensor coverage. Sarah established primary position on same ridgeline where she had watched hostile observer weeks ago. Circle completing itself, beginning connecting to present in ways that felt both inevitable and earned. Rachel took position covering northern approach. Wade covered east. Hammond provided technical support from TOC. Chen and Morrison established mobile reserve that could respond to penetrations anywhere in perimeter. They waited. Attack came at 0300. Professional assault, multiple teams, coordinated movement, everything intelligence had predicted. Network was demonstrating capacity despite losses, proving they remained dangerous despite ongoing investigation. But Network had made one critical error. They had attacked location where defenders understood terrain better than sensors, where fundamentals provided advantages technology could not match, where soldiers trained by Marcus Cole's methods waited with patience and rifles that did not require network connection to function. Sarah watched through scope as assault teams approached sensor grid, saw them use electronic warfare to jam detection systems, saw them move confidently through what they believed were blind spots. But wind betrayed them. Vegetation movement revealed positions sensors could not track. Thermal differentials showed heat signatures obscured by jamming. Knowledge that could not be hacked or jammed provided targeting data that made resistance futile. She keyed radio. All stations ghost. Target grid November 7, 8 hostiles. Wind northeast 12 knots. Engage on my mark. Synchronized fire from 5 positions. Professional shooting that dropped half assault team before they understood they were under fire. Remaining hostiles took cover. Returned fire toward wrong positions. Training had prepared them for sensor-guided response, not for defenders who operated without sensors. Sarah relocated. Marcus Cole's first rule: never shoot twice from same position. Move 300 meters east. Established new hide. Acquired new targets. Fired. Hit. Relocated again. Assault teams tried to adapt, shifted tactics, attempted flanking maneuvers. But every movement was revealed by wind. Every position exposed by fundamentals their training had not emphasized. They were fighting enemy who saw what they could not hide. Within 30 minutes, assault was broken, teams retreating, dragging casualties, leaving equipment, professional withdrawal, but withdrawal nonetheless. Sarah did not pursue, did not expose defensive positions to chase enemy into terrain where they might have advantages. Let them go because victory was measured in successful defense, not body count. Pritchard's voice came over radio. Ghost, assault repelled, 0 friendly casualties, multiple hostile casualties and captures. How the hell did you know they were coming? Intelligence assessment was accurate, sir. Network wanted to send message. We sent different message, one they'll understand. After action reports took hours, federal investigators descended on Ironwood to interrogate captured assault team members. Names provided led to arrests. Arrests led to more names. Network was unraveling under pressure that refused to relent. But Sarah knew this was not ending. Networks had redundancies. Backups Vance had warned about. People still operating in shadows, still selling intelligence, still causing deaths. Mission would continue. Months into years into however long it took. She had accepted that when she accepted command of Task Force Atlas, when she picked up Marcus Cole's rifle and decided to finish what he started. Some missions never truly ended, just evolved into new phases requiring new approaches. She stood on ridgeline as dawn broke over Ironwood, rifle resting across her knees, wind moving through valley with patterns she knew without needing sensors to measure them. Below, base was returning to normal operations, guards standing down from alert, life continuing despite violence that had threatened to disrupt it. Rachel climbed ridgeline to join her, settled beside her without words. Both women watching sunrise that felt earned, that felt like payment for choices made and prices paid. Finally, Rachel spoke. How long do we keep doing this? Until it's finished. That could be years, decades maybe. Then decades. Sarah looked at rifle, at engraving that had become definition of how she approached world. Marcus Cole spent 20 years learning fundamentals, died protecting evidence. That's his investment. We honor it by seeing mission through, however long that takes. What if we don't survive that long? Then Wade continues, and soldiers he trains continue. Knowledge doesn't die if someone carries it forward. Mission doesn't end if someone picks up rifle after we drop it. Rachel considered this. You really believe that? I believe Marcus Cole believed it. That's sufficient. They sat in silence as sun climbed higher, base below them becoming fully illuminated. New day beginning, new operations to plan, new targets to identify, new phases of mission that would continue until network was destroyed or Task Force Atlas was. But for this moment, victory was enough. Defense successful, base secure, soldiers alive who might have died if fundamentals had been forgotten in favor of technology that could be compromised. The wind moved through a valley, cold and clean, carrying nothing but truth about terrain and conditions, never lying, never compromising, never selling information to enemies who would use it to kill soldiers. Sarah understood why Marcus Cole had trusted wind more than sensors, why he had spent career teaching fundamentals to students who might carry them forward, why he had chosen death-protecting evidence rather than life-accepting compromise. Some things were worth dying for. Some missions were worth finishing regardless of cost. Some knowledge was worth preserving even when preserving it required sacrifice. The wind never lied. Neither would Sarah Brennan as long as she carried rifle with those words engraved in stock. As long as she remembered teacher who had taught her, as long as mission remained unfinished. She stood, shouldered rifle, turned toward base where team waited and operations continued and duty demanded presence over contemplation. Behind her, sun fully cleared horizon, light spreading across landscape, revealing everything, hiding nothing. The way truth eventually revealed everything and hid nothing if you were patient enough and brave enough and committed enough to keep looking until looking became finding. Task Force Atlas would keep looking, keep hunting, keep operating in shadows until shadows no longer protected Kane's network, until justice was served not through legal processes that could be corrupted, but through operations that remove corruption at source. Marcus Cole would have approved of methods, of commitment, of understanding that some missions required soldiers willing to operate outside regulations when regulations protected wrong people. Sarah walked down ridgeline toward base, toward team, toward future operations that would span continents and years, toward mission that defined who she was and what she fought for. The wind followed her down, constant, truthful, never lying about what waited ahead or what had been left behind. Just wine being wind the way soldiers tried to be soldiers. Constant in purpose, truthful in execution, never lying about cost of doing what needed to be done. This was not ending. This was continuation. Marcus Cole's mission flowing through Sarah, flowing through Wade, flowing through whoever came next. Chain unbroken as long as someone was willing to carry rifle and knowledge forward. The wind never lied. Neither would Task Force Atlas. Simple as that, complicated as that, true as that. Sarah reached base perimeter, passed through gate where guards saluted, returned salutes, kept walking toward operations center where briefing waited and mission continued and future called with voice that sounded like Marcus Cole telling her to trust fundamentals when technology failed. She would trust, she would continue, she would finish what he started. However long that took, whatever that cost, whoever had to carry rifle after she could not. Mission was everything. Dawn everything. Mission was simple. Mission was eternal. Dismantle Kane's network. Protect soldiers. Honor Marcus Cole's sacrifice. Trust the win. The rest was just details waiting to be resolved through operations not yet planned, in places not yet identified against enemies not yet targeted. But they would be planned. They would be identified. They would be targeted. Because Task Force Atlas existed for exactly this purpose. Because Sarah Brennan existed for exactly this mission. Because Marcus Cole had died ensuring someone would exist to finish what he could not. The wind moved through ironwood, speaking language only certain soldiers understood, telling truths that sensors could not measure, revealing paths that technology could not identify. Sarah listened, understood, acted accordingly. That was sufficient. That was everything. That was enough. Winter returned to Montana with the kind of cold that made previous winters feel like practice, the kind that tested equipment and resolve in equal measure. 6 months had passed since Task Force Atlas had defended Ironwood against network retaliation. 6 months of operations across continents. 6 months of systematic dismantling of conspiracy that had killed Marcus Cole and hundreds of others. The network was broken, not destroyed. Networks never truly died. They adapted, reformed, found new hosts like diseases finding new victims, but broken enough that intelligence agencies could track remaining elements through conventional means. Broken enough that soldiers were safer than they had been in 5 years. Broken enough that mission Marcus Cole had started with his life was approaching something that resembled completion. Sarah Brennan stood in an office at Fort Bragg that had become operational headquarters for Task Force Atlas. Maps covered walls, photos of captured conspirators, red lines connecting nodes that no longer function, black marks through names of people who would never threaten soldiers again. Evidence of work that would never appear in official records but would echo through intelligence communities for decades. Colonel Pritchard entered without knocking. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. Command aged people faster than combat. Responsibility for lives and missions extracting payment in gray hair and worry lines that never quite disappeared. Major Brennan, good news and complicated news. Start with good, sir. Federal prosecutors have secured convictions on 47 conspirators, including Kane, death penalty for treason, multiple life sentences for others. Network's financial infrastructure is frozen, assets seized, operations disrupted permanently. He paused. Marcus Cole's death has been officially reclassified. Not training accident, killed in action during classified operation. His family will receive full military honors and benefits they were denied. Sarah felt something release in chest, tension she had carried so long it had become part of her. Justice delayed, but not denied. Recognition earned, but not received until now. Marcus Cole's name cleared, his sacrifice acknowledged, not publicly, not with ceremony, but officially, in records that mattered to people who understood what those records meant. And complicated news? Pritchard set folder on desk. Task Force Atlas is being disbanded. Mission accomplished. Remaining network elements will be handled by conventional agencies. You and your team are being reassigned. Reassigned where? That's your choice. You've earned promotion to Lieutenant Colonel, command of any sniper section in Army, or instructor position at Fort Benning, or retirement with full benefits. After what you've accomplished, Army will support whatever you choose. Sarah looked at maps on walls, at evidence of work that had consumed 6 months and felt like 6 years, at proof that mission could be completed if right people committed to completing it. What about my team? Wade, Hammond, Chen, Morrison, Rachel? Same options, their choice. But Sarah, you need to understand something. Pritchard's expression was serious, weighted. You've been operational for 18 months straight. High-intensity operations, no breaks. That takes toll, physical and mental. You've earned rest. I recommend you take it. I'll consider recommendations, sir. After he left, Sarah sat alone with folder containing reassignment options. Each option represented different future, different path, different version of who she might become after mission ended. But mission had not ended, not really. Network was broken but not destroyed. Other threats existed, other enemies who would compromise systems and betray soldiers, other operations that would require fundamentals when technology failed. Marcus Cole had spent 20 years preparing for a moment when his knowledge would be needed most. Then he had died protecting evidence that made difference. His investment deserved better return than her retirement. She made decision that felt inevitable. That felt like only choice that honored what he had taught her. She would not retire, would not take comfortable position teaching theory to soldiers who might never need it, would return to operational unit, would continue teaching fundamentals to operators who would face enemies that jam sensors and hack networks. But first, she had obligation. Debt owed to family that had paid price for Marcus Cole's commitment to duty. She picked up phone, made calls she had been postponing for months, waiting for mission to reach point where leaving temporarily would not compromise team. Waiting for moment that felt right. Margaret Cole answered on third ring. Voice that Sarah remembered from 2 years ago. Widow who had buried husband without understanding why he had really died. Who had raised son alone while Army processed classified paperwork and restricted information. Mrs. Cole, this is Major Sarah Brennan. We met 2 years ago at Marcus's service. I remember you were the young captain who looked like she was carrying weight of world. Yes, ma'am. I'm calling because I have something that belongs to your family. Something Marcus wanted you to have. I'd like to deliver it personally if you'll permit me to visit. Long pause, then, of course, when? This weekend, if that works. I'll drive from Fort Bragg to Montana. Should arrive Saturday afternoon. I'll tell Jake. He's home on leave from basic training. He asks about you sometimes. About the woman his father trained, the one who finished his mission. I'm looking forward to meeting him, ma'am. After call ended, Sarah went to Armory, retrieved M24 that had accompanied her through operations across continents. Rifle that had spoken truth through scope when words could not. That had demonstrated fundamentals worked when technology failed. That had connected her to Marcus Cole in ways that transcended time and death. She cleaned it one final time. Bore brush, patches, solvent, oil. Each step performed exactly as he had taught her, exactly as she had performed hundreds of times. Ritual that was meditation. Connection that was continuation. On stock, engraving caught light from bare bulb overhead. MC the wind never lies. Words that had defined how she approached world, how she trained soldiers, how she understood difference between what could be measured and what could only be felt. She wrapped rifle carefully, not in case, in cloth that showed respect without pretension. The way Marcus Cole would have wanted, simple, functional, without ceremony that would make gesture more about giver than gift. Saturday came with sunrise that turned Montana landscape gold and white. Sarah drove through mountains where she had hunted Kane's network, where fundamentals had proven superior to technology, where old knowledge had saved lives that new systems could not protect. Cole family home was on outskirts of small town, single-story ranch, well-maintained, American flag on pole in front yard, truck and driveway that looked like it had seen actual work rather than cosmetic ownership. Margaret Cole opened door before Sarah reached porch. 64 years old, face showing years, but also strength that came from surviving things that broke weaker people. She wore jeans and flannel shirt, practical clothing for practical woman who had no patience for pretension. Major Brennan, come in, coffee's ready. Inside, house held evidence of life lived with purpose. Photos on walls showing Marcus in uniform at various ages and ranks. Awards in frames. Memories preserved not for display, but for remembering. Living room open to kitchen where young man sat at table. 19 years old, strong build, eyes that held intelligence and intensity in equal measure. Jake, this is Major Brennan, the officer your father trained. Jake stood, offered hand. Ma'am, Dad talked about you, said you had eyes that saw things others missed. Sarah shook his hand, saw Marcus Cole in his face, in his posture, in quality of attention that suggested wheels turning behind eyes that missed nothing. Your father was generous with compliments. He saw potential where I saw confusion. They sat at kitchen table. Margaret poured coffee. Sarah set wrapped rifle on table between them. The weight of what it represented needed no explanation. This belonged to Marcus. He gave it to me 2 years ago, told me to use it until mission was finished, then return it to family where it belonged. She pushed package toward Margaret. Mission's finished. Rifle's coming home. Margaret unwrapped cloth slowly, revealed M24 that Marcus had carried for years. That had been extension of his skill and symbol of his commitment. She touched stock gently, traced engraving with fingers that remembered man who had carved those words. The wind never lies. He used to say that constantly, like mantra or prayer. It was both, Sarah said, philosophy he learned from his instructor, that his instructor learned from someone before. Knowledge passed down through generations because it worked when everything else failed. Jake leaned forward. Ma'am, if mission's finished, why return rifle now? You could keep it. Dad would have wanted you to have it. Sarah met his eyes. Because rifle doesn't belong to me, belongs to family, to legacy, to whoever carries knowledge forward next. Who's that? You are, if you want to be. Jake exchanged look with his mother, question passing between them without words. Margaret nodded slightly. Permission granted or perhaps recognition acknowledged. Jake spoke carefully. I graduate basic training next month. Then infantry school. Then I'm requesting sniper training. Want to learn what Dad knew, carry forward what he taught. Why what? Sarah asked, not challenging testing. Sniper training is hard, failure rate is high, and even if you succeed, job is dangerous. Your father died doing this work. You understand that? I understand he died doing something that mattered, that his death meant something because you finished what he started. That knowledge he protected saved lives even after he couldn't. Jake's expression was serious beyond his years. I want to be part of that. Want to carry rifle he carried, learn methods he learned, become soldier he would recognize. Sarah studied him, saw determination that could not be taught, commitment that could not be faked, quality that separated soldiers who endured from soldiers who excelled. Same qualities she had seen in Mirror when Marcus Cole had evaluated her years ago. Sniper school takes year, maybe longer. When you graduate, if you graduate, contact me. I'll teach you what your father taught me. Everything he knew about wind and distance and patience. Everything that can't be learned from manuals or measured with sensors. Promise? Promise. But Jake, understand something. This rifle is yours now. Your responsibility. Clean it, maintain it, learn it. When you're ready, it'll teach you what your father wanted you to know. She stood, prepared to leave. Margaret stood as well. Major, wait. I need to know something. Marcus died 2 years ago. Army told me it was training accident. Equipment failure. But you said mission just finished. What really happened? Sarah chose words carefully. Marcus was betrayed by people he trusted. He died protecting evidence of that betrayal. Evidence that exposed conspiracy and saved lives. Army classified details because people involved had power to bury truth. But truth survived because Marcus made sure it would. He died a hero even if Army couldn't say so publicly. Margaret absorbed this, eyes becoming wet but voice remaining steady. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for finishing what he started. Thank you for honoring him by doing what he would have done. He made it easy, ma'am. He taught me everything I needed to know. I just had to trust his lessons. She left feeling lighter than she had in months. Mission with Marcus Cole's family complete. Rifle returned to people who deserved it. Knowledge transferred to next generation who would carry it forward. Circle closing while simultaneously opening to new possibilities. She drove back to Fort Bragg thinking about legacy, about how knowledge survived not in objects but in people, about how Marcus Cole continued teaching even after death because students he trained were now training others. Chain unbroken as long as someone was willing to link their effort to effort that came before. 2 weeks later, Sarah received orders assigning her to training command at Fort Benning. Not instructor position, teaching theory. Operational position, developing new curriculum for counter-sensor warfare. Teaching soldiers how to operate when networks failed and fundamentals became only reliable tools. She accepted assignment, understood it was exactly where she needed to be, where Marcus Cole's knowledge could reach more soldiers than she could train individually, where methods tested across continents could be formalized and distributed to units facing enemies who jammed and hacked and compromised systems. Rachel Torres received similar assignment. Curriculum development focused on small unit tactics in denied communications environments. Wade was assigned to instructor cadre teaching advanced fieldcraft. Hammond to technical training developing hybrid systems that combine sensors with human judgment. Chen and Morrison to operational units where they would apply and refine methods. Task Force Atlas was disbanded, but its lessons survived. Its operators scattered, but its knowledge spreading. Mission that had started with Marcus Cole and continued through Sarah, now flowing to hundreds of soldiers who would face enemies in environments where old skills mattered again. On her last day at Fort Bragg, Sarah walked perimeter one final time, thinking about journey that had brought her from grief-stricken captain to major, who commanded respect earned through operations that would never be publicly acknowledged. Thinking about price paid and mission accomplished and what came next. Wade found her at observation point, overlooking training ranges where new snipers learned fundamentals that might save their lives someday. Ma'am, got a minute? Always, Wade. What's on your mind? He sat beside her on cold ground. I've been thinking about what you said, about knowledge surviving if someone carries it forward, about mission continuing even after we finish our part. And I want to make sure I do it right. Training next generation, teaching what you taught me. What Marcus Cole taught you, I don't want to mess it up. Sarah smiled. You won't. Want to know how I know? How? Because you're asking the question. Soldiers who worry about doing it right usually do. Soldiers who assume they know everything usually fail. Marcus Cole worried about teaching me correctly. I worried about teaching you correctly. Now you're worried about teaching whoever comes next. That worry is proof you'll succeed. Wade nodded slowly. Did Marcus Cole ever tell you why he chose you? Why he spent 2 years teaching you everything he knew? No, never explained his reasoning. I think I know why. Tell me. Because you reminded him of himself when he was learning. Hungry to understand, willing to work, smart enough to know you didn't know everything, but confident enough to trust what you did know. Wade paused. That's why I listened to you, ma'am. You teach like he taught, patient but demanding, clear but complex. You make hard things understandable without making them seem easy. Thank you, Wade. That means more than you know. One more question, ma'am. Do you ever talk to him, Marcus Cole, by name, tell him about missions or how training is going? I know he's gone, but do you ever feel like he's still teaching you? Sarah thought about this. About nights alone on operations when she had imagined Marcus Cole's voice explaining wind patterns. About moments of doubt when she remembered his confidence. About decisions made by asking herself what he would have done in the same situation. Every day, she said quietly. Every day I carry his rifle, I hear his voice. Every soldier I train, I see his methods. Every mission I complete, I feel his approval or his disappointment, depending on whether I followed fundamentals or took shortcuts. He's gone, but his teaching remains. That's what legacy means. Presence that survives absence. Wade stood. Then I'll make sure his teaching survives through me. Through soldiers I train, through knowledge I pass forward. Same way you made sure it survived through me. After he left, Sarah remained at observation point, watching suns set over ranges, watching trainees pack equipment after long day, watching new generation of soldiers learning skills that previous generations had refined through practice and sacrifice. She thought about Marcus Cole, about rifles she had returned to his family, about son who would learn his father's methods, about chain of knowledge that extended backward through decades and forward through future that had not yet arrived. Honor did not require audience. Justice did not require recognition. Knowledge did not require acknowledgement. These things existed in doing, in continuing, in refusing to let important things die just because people who created them had died. Marcus Cole had understood this, had lived it, had died protecting it. Now his knowledge flowed through Sarah to Wade, to Jake, to hundreds of soldiers who would never know his name, but would benefit from his teaching. That was legacy, not monuments or medals, not speeches or ceremonies, just knowledge moving forward, just skills surviving, just fundamentals remaining relevant when technology advanced beyond them and then failed, leaving fundamentals as only reliable tools. The wind moved through Fort Bragg, cold and clean, carrying nothing but truth about conditions, never lying about what waited ahead or what had been left behind. Just wind being wind the way soldiers tried to be soldiers. Constant in purpose, truthful in execution, never compromising what mattered for what was convenient. Sarah stood, prepared to leave observation point and return to quarters. Tomorrow she would begin new assignment, new mission, new phase of career that would be measured not in operations conducted, but in soldiers trained, not in enemies defeated, but in knowledge preserved. But before leaving, she spoke words meant for teacher who could not hear them, but might somehow know. Mission continues, Marcus. Knowledge survives. Thank you for everything. Wind was only answer, but sometimes wind was answer enough. 3 months into training command assignment, Sarah received message that made her smile. Jake Cole had graduated basic training, top of his class, heading to infantry school with recommendation for sniper training. He was following path his father had walked, learning profession his father had mastered. She sent response, brief, direct. In style, Marcus Cole would have approved. Congratulations. Keep working. You have a long way to go, but if you maintain commitment, you'll get there. See you when you finish sniper school. Year passed. Operations continued in places Sarah would never see conducted by soldiers she would never meet using methods she had helped develop. Network that had killed Marcus Cole remained broken. New threats emerged, different enemies with different tactics. But fundamentals remained relevant. Wind still needed reading. Distance still needed ranging. Patience still separated professional snipers from shooters who could hit targets when conditions were perfect. Sarah taught these fundamentals to instructors who taught them to students who would teach them to next generation. Chain extending forward, knowledge surviving. Marcus Cole's investment yielding returns that compounded across years and continents. On cold morning in November, email arrived from Jake Cole. Subject line read simply, graduated. Message was brief. Ma'am, completed sniper school, distinguished graduate, ready to learn what my father knew. When can we start? Sarah replied immediately. Report to Fort Benning next Monday. Bring rifle your father carried. We have work to do. Monday came with sunrise that felt significant. Not because sun rose differently, but because moment mattered in ways that transcended meteorology. Jake Cole arrived at training facility wearing uniform that fit like it belonged, carrying a rifle case that contained M24 his father had carried, and Sarah had used to finish mission Marcus had started. They met at private range, away from main training areas, where instruction could be individual and focused, where legacy could be honored without ceremony that would diminish meaning. Jake set case down, opened it carefully, revealed rifle that Sarah knew intimately, that she had cleaned hundreds of times, that she had used to speak truth through scope when words were insufficient. Before we begin, Sarah said, I need you to understand something. Your father was best sniper I ever knew, best teacher I ever had. What I'm about to teach you is exactly what he taught me. His methods, his philosophy, his understanding of fundamentals. You ready for that responsibility? Yes, ma'am. Good. First lesson, load rifle, feel weight, understand balance. This rifle was made for someone your father's size. You're taller, heavier, it won't fit perfectly, but you adapt to rifle. Rifle doesn't adapt to you, understand? Yes, ma'am. Second lesson, close your eyes. Jake complied. Feel wind on your face, don't measure it, feel it. Which direction? How strong? Jake stood with eyes closed, face turned slightly into breeze. Northeast, maybe 10 knots. Open your eyes, look at vegetation 800 meters away. 3 o'clock. See how branches move? Yes, ma'am. That's your confirmation. Eyes provide data. Skin provides insight. Together they tell truth that sensors measure but don't understand. Your father called it reading wind. I call it listening to what can't be heard. Either way, it's fundamental that separates professional snipers from shooters with fancy equipment. They trained for 6 hours. Jake was good, not expert, not yet, but good in ways that suggested expertise would come with practice and patience. He had his father's discipline, his mother's determination. Combination that made learning possible and mastery probable. At end of session, Sarah gave him assignment. Take rifle home, clean it tonight, exactly as manual specifies. Tomorrow we train again, every day for 2 weeks. You'll learn more in those 2 weeks than you learned in year of sniper school. Because I'm teaching what your father knew, what can't be taught in classrooms or manuals, what only survives when someone who knows teaches someone who wants to learn. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank me. Honor it by learning, by practicing. By becoming sniper, your father would recognize and respect. That's payment for knowledge he died protecting. 2 weeks became 4. 4 became 8. Jake progressed faster than Sarah had expected. Natural talent enhanced by motivation that came from carrying father's legacy. By month 3, he was shooting groups at 1,200 meters that matched what Sarah could achieve. By month 6, he was teaching her things about rifles she had not known, discovering subtleties through practice that created understanding deeper than instruction alone could provide. On final day of training, Sarah took him to same ridgeline where she had returned from operations months ago, where she had spoken to Marcus Cole's memory, where wind had been only answer, but answer had been sufficient. Last lesson, she said, everything I've taught you is foundation. Your father's knowledge transferred through me to you, but knowledge alone isn't enough. You need to understand why we do this, why fundamentals matter, why teaching next generation is sacred obligation, not optional activity. Jake listened with attention that reminded her of herself years ago, learning from Marcus Cole, absorbing not just techniques but philosophy that made techniques meaningful. We do this because technology fails, she continued. Networks get compromised, sensors get jammed, equipment breaks. When that happens, only fundamentals remain. Wind reading, distance ranging, patience. These skills kept soldiers alive for generations before sensors existed. They'll keep soldiers alive for generations after sensors advance beyond what we can imagine today. Your father understood this, died protecting it. Now you understand it. Will you protect it? Yes, ma'am. How? By teaching next generation. Same way you taught me, same way my father taught you. Knowledge doesn't die if someone carries it forward. Exactly, Sarah handed him envelope. You're being assigned to operational unit, classified location, dangerous mission. You'll use everything I taught you, everything your father knew. You'll face situations where fundamentals are only tools that work. When you survive those situations, you'll understand why this matters. Why we spend time teaching skills that seem obsolete. Why old knowledge remains relevant when new technology advances. Jake took envelope. Ma'am, will I see you again after this assignment? Probably. Army's small, sniper community is smaller. Our paths will cross. She paused. But whether we see each other or not, your father's knowledge continues through you. That's what matters. Not meetings or reunions. Continuation. That's legacy. That's honor. That's duty we owe to soldiers who taught us. They shook hands. Professional, respectful, connection between teacher and student, between woman who had learned from father and son who was learning from woman, chain linking backward and forward simultaneously. After Jake left, Sarah remained on Ridgeline, thinking about journey that had brought her from grieving captain to lieutenant colonel who trained next generation. Thinking about Marcus Cole and mission that had consumed years of her life. Thinking about knowledge that survived because people chose to carry it forward rather than let it fade. Her phone buzzed. Message from Wade. Ma'am, new class of instructors starting next week. They're requesting you teach module on counter-sensor warfare. Interested? She typed response. Affirmative. Send curriculum requirements. I'll prepare material. Because mission never ended, just evolved into new phases requiring new approaches. Marcus Cole had known this, had prepared her for it. Now she prepared others for phases they would face in futures that had not yet arrived. Wynn moved through Fort Benning. Constant, truthful, never lying about conditions or costs, just Wynn being Wynn, reliable in ways that people and technology could not match. Sarah stood, prepared to leave Ridgeline, return to quarters, begin preparing training material for next class, continue mission that Marcus Cole had started and she had sustained and Jake would carry forward and soldiers not yet born would eventually inherit. Some missions spanned lifetimes, required generations, could not be measured by single person's contribution, but by accumulated effect of many people doing small things consistently over long periods. This was one of those missions, teaching fundamentals, preserving knowledge, ensuring soldiers had skills that worked when technology failed. Simple mission, eternal mission. Mission that mattered more than any operation she had conducted or any enemies she had eliminated. Because operations ended, enemies were replaced. But knowledge survived if someone carried it. Methods remained effective if someone taught them. Legacy continued if someone honored it. She walked down Ridgeline toward base, toward quarters, toward future that would include training and teaching and passing forward what Marcus Cole had passed to her. Behind her, sunset over ranges where soldiers trained, light fading but not disappearing, just transforming into different conditions that required different techniques. Same way warfare transformed, but fundamentals remained constant. The wind never lied. Neither would she. Neither would Jake. Neither would soldiers they trained. Chain unbroken because people chose to link their effort to effort that came before an effort that would come after. That was enough. That was everything. That was legacy. 2 years passed. Sarah was promoted to full colonel. Command of all sniper training for Army. Position that allowed her to implement methods developed during Task Force Atlas operations. Methods tested across continents. Methods that worked when technology failed. Jake Cole distinguished himself in combat operations. Multiple decorations. Reputation as sniper who could operate in environments where others failed. Not because he was superhuman. Because he trusted fundamentals when others trusted sensors. Because his father had taught woman who taught him that wind never lied even when everything else did. Rachel Torres commanded training battalion. Wade ran advanced instructor program. Hammond developed next-generation equipment that incorporated human judgment into technical systems. Chen and Morrison operated in classified locations against threats that required old skills applied to new problems. Network that killed Marcus Cole was destroyed, not forgotten, history remembered, lessons learned, but destroyed enough that new networks thought twice before selling intelligence that would get soldiers killed. Fear was effective teacher when applied correctly. On anniversary of Marcus Cole's death, Sarah visited his grave. National cemetery where soldiers who died in service were buried with honor and recognition. His headstone was simple. Name, rank, years of service. No mention of how he died or what he accomplished. Just facts that any observer could read. But she knew truth. Knew he had died protecting evidence that saved lives. Knew his knowledge survived through soldiers he had trained. Knew his legacy was measured not in monuments, but in continued teaching of fundamentals that kept working when technology failed. She placed hand on cold stone, spoke words meant for someone who could not hear, but might somehow know. Mission continues. Knowledge survives. Your son is good sniper. Better than good. He teaches others now. Chain unbroken. Thank you for everything. For trust, for patience, for showing me that old knowledge matters more than new technology when lives hang in balance. Wind was only answer, but wind was always answer when you learned to listen, when you trusted fundamentals over convenience, when you understood that truth existed in what could be felt rather than what could be measured. She left cemetery feeling peace that came from completing mission, from honoring teacher, from ensuring legacy continued. Not dramatic peace, not Hollywood ending, just quiet satisfaction that came from doing right thing consistently over long period despite obstacles and setbacks and doubts. That evening, she received message from Jake. Ma'am, teaching my first class next week. New snipers learning fundamentals. Nervous but ready. Any advice? She typed response. Teach what your father taught me, what I taught you. Trust the methods. Trust the students. Trust that knowledge survives if someone carries it forward. You'll do fine. Your father would be proud. She sent message. Thought about chain of knowledge extending backward through generations and forward through futures not yet realized. Thought about Marcus Cole and soldiers he had trained. Thought about legacy that survived because people chose to honor it through action rather than words. Her office held evidence of career spent teaching fundamentals. Photos of soldiers she had trained. Commendations from units that had used her methods. Letters from families of soldiers whose lives had been saved because someone had taught them to read wind when sensors failed. This was legacy, not personal glory, not individual recognition, just accumulated effect of many people doing small things consistently. Just knowledge moving forward because people chose to carry it rather than let it die. On wall above her desk, single item dominated space. Photograph of Marcus Cole, younger than she had known him, standing at range with rifle across shoulders, expression serious but not grim. Man who understood his work mattered, who approached duty with gravity it deserved, who would die protecting knowledge he had spent lifetime accumulating. Below photo, brass plate held engraving, 4 words that had defined how she approached world, how she trained soldiers, how she understood difference between what could be measured and what could only be felt. The wind never lies. She looked at those words for a long moment, thinking about truth they contained, about philosophy they represented, about legacy they preserved. Then she turned to a computer, opened training manual she was developing, began writing curriculum for next generation of snipers who would face enemies in environments where fundamentals mattered, where old knowledge provided advantages that new technology could not match, where soldiers who trusted wind would survive situations that killed soldiers who trusted only sensors. Work continued. Mission evolved. Legacy survived. Outside her window, night fell over Fort Benning. Stars emerged in quantities that city dwellers never saw. Cold that made air feel thin and clear. Wind that moved through darkness carrying truth about conditions and never lying about what waited ahead. Sarah worked late into night, writing, refining, preparing material that would reach thousands of soldiers across coming years. Material that embodied Marcus Cole's knowledge and Sarah's experience and accumulated wisdom of generations of snipers who had learned that fundamentals worked when everything else failed. This was how legacy survived, not through dramatic moments or heroic sacrifices, through quiet work done consistently over long periods, through knowledge passed from teacher to student to next teacher, through chain of learning that extended backward and forward simultaneously. Marcus Cole had forged link in that chain. Sarah had maintained it. Jake was extending it. Soldiers not yet born would inherit it. Chain unbroken as long as someone chose to carry weight of knowledge forward rather than let it die with generation that learned it. She paused typing, looked at photo on wall, spoke words to man who could not hear, but whose teaching had shaped everything she had become. Thank you, Marcus, for trust, for patience, for showing me what matters. Mission continues, knowledge survives, rest well, we have it from here. Wind outside window was only sound, but wind had always been answer when you learned to listen, when you trusted fundamentals, when you understood that legacy was measured not in recognition, but in continuation. Sarah returned to writing, to teaching, to mission that would last her lifetime and beyond. Mission that Marcus Cole had started, that she had sustained, that Jake would carry forward, that soldiers not yet born would eventually inherit. Some missions span generations, required patience, could not be measured by single person's contribution. This was one of those missions, and it would continue, because knowledge survived when people chose to carry it, because fundamentals worked when technology failed, because wind never lied even when everything else did. That was legacy. That was honor. That was duty. Simple as that. Complicated as that. True as that. The wind moved through Fort Benning, cold and clean and constant, speaking language that certain soldiers understood, telling truths that sensors could not measure, revealing paths that technology could not identify. Sarah listened, understood, continued accordingly. That was sufficient. That was everything. That was enough. I've told a lot of stories about soldiers over the years, but Sarah Brennan's journey hits different. Maybe it's because she proved that the fundamentals our generation learned still matter when everything modern fails. Or maybe it's because she honored Marcus Cole's sacrifice the way we'd all want to be honored, by finishing the mission. What got me most was that rifle, M24, older than most recruits today, but in the right hands, unstoppable. Makes me wonder, how many of you carried weapons your sergeants called obsolete, but knew would never let you down? Drop a comment. I read every single one. And if this story resonated, there are more like it coming. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. Your storyteller.